Welcome to the Adult Storyteller. Story number 1. The first time I stepped into the Skin Library, the air clung to me like a second skin, thick with the scent of aged leather and something darker, something organic, as if the very walls had absorbed the sweat and terror of centuries. The narrow corridors of the Prague archive twisting like veins beneath the dim glow of gas lamps that flickered as though breathing, their light pooling in uneasy puddles on the warped wooden floors. My footsteps muffled by the weight of silence that wasn't quite silence. No, it was a whisper, a collective sigh from the shelves, the books themselves rustling as if shifting in their sleep. And I told myself it was just the draft, just the old building settling. But then I saw it, nestled in a glass case at the heart of the library, its cover a mottled, fleshy brown, stretched taut over what could only be human binding, the Codex Carnus, its title etched in what looked like dried blood, the letters raised and uneven, as though the skin had resisted the carving, and the librarian, a gaunt man with eyes like polished obsidian, noticed my gaze and smiled, a slow, deliberate thing that didn't reach his eyes, his fingers, long and tapered, too precise, brushing the glass as he said, "A rare treasure, one that chooses its readers." And I laughed, because what else do you do when faced with the absurd? But then he opened the case, and the smell hit me, not rot but something alive, a coppery tang beneath the leather, and when I reached out, against my better judgment, the cover moved under my touch, warm and yielding, a shudder passing through it like a muscle flexing, and I recoiled, my heart hammering, the librarian's smile widening as he murmured, "It likes you." And that night, in the cramped hotel room that suddenly felt too large, too empty, I woke to a burning sensation on my forearm, the skin there raised and angry, words forming as though carved by an invisible blade. He will drown in the dark, choking on his own breath as the walls close in, and I scrambled to the bathroom, scrubbing at the letters until my skin bled. But they only darkened, the text now a part of me, a prophecy etched in flesh, and by morning, the librarian was waiting outside my door, his coat damp with rain, his voice a razor's edge as he said, "You've been chosen." And I followed him back to the library, because what else could I do, the words on my arm throbbing with every step, the shelves now feeling like ribs, the library a living thing, swallowing me whole. And when he opened the codex this time, I heard it, a sound like a gasp, a wet, strangled cry coming from the pages as they turned, the vellum too thick, too wrong, its surface puckered with pores, the text written in veins that branched like capillaries, and the librarian's voice dropped to a whisper as he told me of the surgeon, his ancestor, a man who believed the soul resided in the skin, who stitched his victims into books to preserve their screams, their final moments, their essence. And as he spoke, my fingers brushed a page, and it shrieked, a sound that wasn't sound but vibration, a scream trapped in the fibers, and I stumbled back, my vision swimming, the librarian's hand suddenly on my shoulders, his breath in my ear. "You're already in it, you know. The book knows how you die." And I ran through the labyrinth of shelves, past the eyes of 100 leather-bound tomes that seemed to watch me, the walls narrowing, the air thickening, until I found myself in the detective's office, a man with hollow cheeks and ink-stained fingers who listened to my ravings with a grimace, his own sleeves rolled up to reveal words snaking up his wrists. He will open the book and see himself, and he agreed to help, because he had no choice, because the library had its hooks in him too. And together we unraveled the surgeon's history, the graveyard of missing persons, the librarian's ledger filled with names that matched the vanished, the dates they'd last been seen, the dates they'd become pages. And when we returned, the library was waiting, the codex laid bare on a pedestal, the librarian nowhere to be seen, the detective's hands shaking as he reached for it, his voice cracking as he read the first line. The detective will open the book, and see his own skin staring back, and then he screamed, because the page was his, the texture familiar, the birthmark near the edge unmistakable, and the book pulsed in his hands, the spine splitting open with a sound like tearing flesh, the librarian emerging from the shadows, a scalpel glinting in the low light, his smile now a rictus of triumph as he whispered, "Every library needs new acquisitions." And the last thing I saw before the darkness took me was the detective's face, his mouth Open in a silent scream, his skin peeling away in ribbons, the pages of the codex fluttering hungrily, and now, as I write this, the words burning into my own skin with every passing second. I can feel it, the book's warmth, its hunger, and I know, with a certainty that chills my bones, that the next scream will be mine. The words keep spreading, crawling up my arms like spiders made of ink, each letter a searing brand as my skin betrays me. The library's shadows stretching longer, breathing deeper, the gas lamps now flickering in time with my pulse as I stagger backward, the detective's final scream still echoing in the hollows of my skull, his face melting into the codex's hungry pages, his skin now parchment, his terror now text. And the librarian steps closer, his fingers flexing around the scalpel, its edge catching the dim light in a way that makes my stomach twist, his voice a serpent's hiss as he murmurs, "You've read it, you've touched it, and now it's reading you." And I want to run, but my legs won't obey, the floor itself sticky beneath my shoes, the wood groaning as if the library is digesting me already, the air thick with the scent of old blood and something sweetly rotten, like fruit left to spoil in a sealed room. And the codex lies open before me, its pages fluttering without wind, the words rearranging themselves into my story, my fate, the sentence on my arm now complete. He will become the next chapter, his skin the binding, his screams the ink. And I try to scream, but my throat is closing, the librarian's hands on my shoulders, his touch cold and surgical, his breath against my ear as he whispers, "Don't struggle. It only hurts more if you struggle." And then the scalpel kisses my wrist, a line of fire racing up my arm, my vision swimming as the pain blossoms, the codex trembling in anticipation, its pages rustling like hungry mouths, and I watch, helpless, as my skin peels back in ribbons, the librarian humming as he works, his fingers deft as a bookbinder's, my flesh unspooling into vellum, my blood staining the margins, my voice joining the chorus of screams trapped within the book, each page a face, each sentence a last breath, and as the darkness swallows me whole, I realize the truth. I was never the investigator, never the hunter, only another fool who thought he could outrun the story. But the story was always waiting, always writing itself, and now, as my vision fades to black, I feel the final words etching themselves into what's left of me. The last line of my chapter, the librarian's voice the last thing I hear. Welcome to the collection. I am still screaming, but the sound is no longer mine. It is part of the book now, woven into the fibers of its cursed pages. My voice just another thread in the tapestry of agony that makes up the codex carnus. My skin stretched taut over its spine. My final moments etched in ink that still burns, still moves, as if the words themselves are alive, squirming like maggots beneath the surface. And I can feel the others here with me. The ones who came before, their whispers slithering through the vellum, their terror a constant vibration beneath the fingertips of every new reader who dares to open the book, their hands trembling as they trace the lines of our suffering, unaware that we are aware, that we feel every touch, every horrified gasp, every frantic heartbeat as they realize what they're holding. And the librarian is still out there, his footsteps echoing through the hollow halls of the skin library, his scalpel glinting as he selects his next guest, his next donation, his lips curling into that same knowing smile as he murmurs, "It's not just a book, it's an archive of souls." And I want to warn them, to scream until my voice shatters the glass cases and brings the whole cursed place crumbling down. But the codex holds me tight, its grip unyielding, its hunger endless. And I know now that this is my eternity, my skin a prison, my screams a story, my fate a sentence written long before I ever set foot in Prague, before I ever heard the whispers of the skin library, before I ever felt the warmth of the codex's flesh-bound cover. And as another victim's fingers brush the page, their eyes widening in dawning horror, I pour my remaining will into the ink, into the words that now rise to meet them, the letters shifting, writhing, forming a new prophecy, a new death. And somewhere in the darkness, the librarian laughs, soft and satisfied, as the cycle begins again. The horror deepens as new readers come, their trembling fingers tracing my flayed skin now stretched taut across these unholy pages, each touch sending fresh waves of phantom pain through what remains of my consciousness, their gasps as they recognize human features preserved in the vellum. An eyelid here, the curve of a lip there, the faint impression of a screaming mouth pressed forever into the fiber of my page, only feeding the codex's malignant hunger, their shock and revulsion somehow, nourishing this abomination, and I feel the librarian's presence more than see it, his shadow falling across each new victim as they read their doom in my screaming text, his breath quickening with perverse excitement as their fingers begin twitching uncontrollably, their skin flushing red where the first words of their own death sentences are already rising to the surface in angry welts, the transfer beginning anew. While deep in the marrow of my being I sense the other trapped soul stirring. In sympathetic agony, our collective torment resonating through the codex's grisly pages like a church bell's mournful toll. Each new addition to this blasphemous library stretching the limits of suffering until I can almost perceive the surgeon's original madness, his warped belief that this eternal preservation constituted some twisted form of mercy, that by binding us in this cursed tome, he was granting us immortality, and the cruelest realization of all dawns as I feel my consciousness beginning to fray at the edges, not fading but spreading, thinning like ink bleeding through parchment, my identity dissolving into the chorus of screams that form the codex's true voice, until I can no longer remember which screams are mine and which belong to the centuries of victims before me. Our suffering merged into one endless, wordless wail that echoes through the library's haunted halls whenever some poor fool turns our pages. The librarian's footsteps drawing nearer with each passing hour, his collection nearly complete, his life's work approaching some terrible culmination that even we, the damned, cannot fathom. Our terror now the very mortar that holds these accursed walls together. The passage of time becomes meaningless in this leather-bound purgatory, where every scream is preserved in perfect clarity, and every moment of dying stretches into eternity. My consciousness now woven so completely into the codex's cursed fibers that I can feel each new victim's approach before they even enter the library, their footfalls sending tremors through the shelves like prey stumbling into a spider's web, their frightened breaths making the pages flutter in anticipation. And today's visitor is different somehow. I sense it in the way the words on my page darken and swell, in how the surgeon's descendant lingers near the entrance with uncharacteristic hesitation, his usual predatory confidence replaced by something resembling fear. And when the newcomer finally touches the glass case containing us, the shock of recognition nearly unmakes what little remains of my soul, because this one bears the librarian's own features, his mirror image down to the slight crook in the nose, but younger, softer, and the terrible truth crashes over me. He has brought his heir, his apprentice, the next curator of this abattoir masquerading as a library, and as the old librarian's gnarled fingers pry open the case with ritual solemnity, I feel the codex itself stirring to wakefulness, our collective screams rising to a crescendo that only we can hear, the very air vibrating with centuries of pent-up agony. And when the young man's fingers first brush my page, the contact sends such a jolt of understanding through me that for a moment I regain something like individuality. I see his entire life unspooling in the ink, every cruelty and kindness that led him to this moment, and most horrifying of all, I see the hesitation in his touch, the moral revulsion his ancestor worked so hard to breed out of their bloodline. And in this instant of clarity, I do the only thing left to me. I twist the words, warp the prophecy, make my page scream louder than all the others combined until the young man staggers back in horror, his eyes wide with realization rather than fear. And for the first time since my skin was flayed and stitched into this nightmare, I feel something like hope flicker in the darkness as he turns to his ancestor with dawning horror and whispers the words that might finally break the cycle. "Father, what have you done?" The air in the library curdles with tension as the young man's question hangs between them, his trembling hands still tingling with the psychic residue of our torment, his father's face twisting into a rictus of fury and something deeper. Fear, the first true fear I've ever sensed from the keeper of this abattoir of souls, and the codex trembles in response, its pages rippling as if caught in a sudden wind, our collective anticipation a living thing as the elder librarian's voice drops to a venomous whisper. "What I was born to do, what you will continue." But the boy, no, the young man, his eyes now alight with horrified understanding, takes another step back, shaking his head, his fingers absently rubbing at his palm where my page's warning has already begun rising to the surface of his skin in angry red welts. The words not his death sentence but ours, our desperate plea finally heard after centuries of screaming into the void, and the elder librarian moves with sudden, terrifying speed, his scalpel flashing as he lunges for his heir. But the boy is quicker, his revulsion granting him strength as he grabs a heavy brass candlestick and brings it down on his father's wrist with a sickening crunch, the scalpel clattering to the floor beside the open codex. And in that moment of chaos, I feel it, the fragile seam of reality straining where the surgeon's ancient magic binds us, the spell momentarily weakened by the violence between blood relatives, and with every ounce of will left to us, we push, we scream, we tear at the metaphysical stitches holding our souls to these flayed pages, and the codex erupts in a geyser of ink and blood and unearthly light, the pages thrashing like dying animals as our combined anguish finally finds release, the library itself seeming to howl around us as centuries of trapped souls begin breaking free, the very shelves buckling under the weight of our collective liberation, and as my consciousness finally unravels from the vellum that was once my skin, I see the young man standing transfixed in the maelstrom, his arms outstretched not in fear, but in something like benediction, his lips moving in words I can no longer hear as the library collapses around him. And in my last moment of coherence before dissipating into whatever comes after this nightmare, I realize with staggering clarity that the words rising on his flesh weren't a death sentence at all. They were a prophecy of liberation, the final line of the Codex's curse finally fulfilled. The sun shall become the flame that burns the bindings. The conflagration of our collective release consumes the library in a whirlwind of screaming leather and burning parchment. Centuries of damned souls finally finding voice as the flames lick up the ancient bookshelves in hungry orange tongues. The air thick with the sickly sweet stench of burning flesh as the Codex's pages blacken and curl, each blistering bubble in the vellum releasing a trapped wail that joins the chorus of our liberation. And through the smoke and chaos I see the young librarian, no longer a boy but not yet a man, standing transfixed at the heart of the inferno, his arms outstretched as our freed essences swirl around him in a maelstrom of long-denied justice, his eyes wide with the terrible beauty of this destruction, tears carving clean streaks down his soot-blackened face as he whispers apologies to ghosts he can suddenly hear clearly, while his ancestor crawls toward the disintegrating codex with broken fingers, his life's work crumbling to ash before his eyes, his mouth stretched in a silent scream of denial as the flames finally claim him too, his flesh bubbling like the covers of the damned books he so cherished. And in these final moments before my consciousness dissolves completely, I feel the other souls around me, some surging upward toward some unfathomable peace, others clinging desperately to the mortal realm they were torn from, a few even turning back toward the flames with vengeance in their spectral hearts. And I make my choice, letting go at last, the last of my identity unraveling like the burning threads of the Codex's spine, the young librarian's final act of defiance having broken the cycle that held us all prisoner, his inherited curse transformed into an unexpected blessing, the flames purging the library of its horrors, but leaving its structure strangely intact, the stone walls standing sentinel over the ashes as dawn's first light filters through the smoke-stained windows, revealing row upon row of empty shelves waiting to be filled with new stories, better stories, while outside in the Prague morning, unbeknownst to the gathering crowd of onlookers, a single page of unburned vellum drifts down onto the cobblestones, its surface blank except for 3 words that glimmer faintly before fading completely. It is done. The drifting ash of the library's destruction swirls in the morning air like spectral remnants of our suffering, settling upon the cobblestones with a silence that feels sacred after centuries of screams. And though my consciousness should have unraveled completely, some final, stubborn fragment of me lingers, tethered not by pain or curse, but by something far stranger, a quiet curiosity to witness what comes after the end, watching as the young librarian stumbles from the smoldering ruins, his clothes singed, his hands blistered from where he tried in vain to salvage anything from the flames, his face hollow with the weight of what he's done and what he's undone, the crowd murmuring around him in a mix of awe and suspicion, their voices overlapping in questions he doesn't answer, their fingers pointing at the smoke still coiling from the library's skeletal remains, and then a shift, a ripple in the air like the moment before a storm breaks, as the first whisper of a new story stirs. In the ashes, not the hungry, possessive whisper of the codex, but something softer, tentative, the sound of a page turning rather than screaming, and the young man's head lifts as if he hears it too, his red-rimmed eyes scanning the ruins with something like recognition, like understanding, and in that moment I realized the truth. The library was never the prison, the books never the captors. It was the stories themselves that were trapped, warped by the surgeon's cruelty, and now, freed from his lineage's perversion, they breathe again, faint but alive, waiting for new hands to hold them, new voices to tell them, and as the last wisp of my awareness finally dissolves, I see the young man step forward, not away from the ruins but toward them, his shadow, stretching long in the dawn light, his fingers brushing the soot-stained doorframe with reverence rather than fear. And I know, with the last certainty I'll ever possess, that the story isn't ending here. It's only just begun. The young librarian's hands, still trembling from the fire's heat, press against the blackened doorframe as if listening for a heartbeat within the ruins. And the moment his skin touches the scorched wood, something remarkable happens. The ash at his feet begins to swirl in slow, deliberate patterns, not carried by wind, but by something deeper, something older. The remnants of countless stories rearranging themselves into new shapes upon the stones, letters forming from soot and ember only to dissolve again before they can be read, a tantalizing glimpse of the library's rebirth already stirring in its death throes, and the crowd's murmurs fade to a hush as they witness this impossible dance of destruction and renewal, their superstitious fear giving way to wary fascination, while the young man, no, the new librarian, for that is what he has become despite himself, feels the first true stirrings of his inheritance, not the surgeon's cruel legacy, but the older magic that existed before. The Codex's perversion, the primal urge to gather stories and safeguard them, to let them breathe without consuming their tellers, and deep within the ruins, beneath layers of ash and memory, a single intact book lies waiting, its cover unmarked by fire, its pages blank but thrumming with potential. And as the new librarian steps across the threshold into what remains of his birthright, the crowd outside swears they hear it. Not a scream this time, but a sigh, the sound of a story finally able to rest, while the first true sentence of the library's new chapter writes itself in invisible ink across the young man's heart, its words simple and unburdened by the weight of the past. Begin again. The blank book hums with latent power beneath the librarian's fingertips as he lifts it from the ashes, its pristine pages somehow repelling the soot that still drifts through the ruined library like spectral confetti. And as he exhales a shuddering breath, the first word forms an elegant, looping script across the parchment. Remember, written not in blood or ink, but in something far more potent. The collective sigh of all the stories that ever were and ever could be, the letters glowing faintly before settling into the fibers of the page, as if they had always belonged there. And outside the ruined walls, the crowd begins to disperse, their curiosity tempered by an unspoken understanding that what happens next is not for them to witness. Their footsteps echoing hollowly on the cobblestones as the new librarian sinks to his knees amidst the wreckage of his inheritance, the blank book cradled in his hands like a newborn thing, its weight both comforting and terrifying in its possibility, and then, soft as a whisper, gentle as forgiveness, other books begin emerging from the ashes, their covers unburned, their spines uncracked by time or malice, arranging themselves on the blackened shelves with quiet purpose, each one a blank slate waiting to be filled, each one pulsing with the same quiet energy as the first, and the librarian knows, with a certainty that settles deep into his bones, that this is his task now, not to collect stories, but to let them collect themselves, to provide sanctuary rather than prison, to listen rather than take, and as the first rays of true daylight pierce through the smoke-stained skylights, illuminating the swirling motes of ash that still dance in the air like characters searching for their stories, the librarian opens his mouth, not to scream, not to curse, but to speak the first word of the library's new chapter, his voice trembling but clear, and the pages tremble in response, ready at last to begin anew. The librarian's first spoken word, once, hangs in the air like a spell, shimmering as it drifts downward to settle onto the blank page where it inks itself into existence with finality, the single syllable vibrating through the scorched shelves and stirring the other waiting books into a soft rustling chorus, their pristine pages fluttering in anticipation like birds about to take flight. And as the librarian draws his next breath, he realizes with dawning wonder that the stories aren't gone. They were merely sleeping, biding their time beneath layers of cruelty and pain, waiting for someone who would listen without stealing, who would cherish without possessing. And now they emerge from their long hibernation, not as prisoners screaming from human parchment, but as living things eager to be told, their essence swirling around him in visible currents of golden light that coalesce into familiar shapes. A knight's sword here, a pirate's ship there, a lover's rose blooming ephemeral, before dissolving again into the ether. Each image a story waiting to be claimed, waiting to breathe again through the voice of a worthy teller. And the librarian feels the weight of his ancestors' sins lifting as the true purpose of the library reveals itself at last. Not as a tomb for stories, but as a cradle, not as a prison, but as a home. And when he reaches out to touch the next blank page, his fingers no longer tremble with fear but thrum with excitement, because he understands now that his curse has transformed into a gift, his inheritance not damnation but redemption. And as the first true smile in generations of his bloodline spreads across his soot-streaked face, the library's walls begin to repair themselves, the scorch marks receding like bad memories, the broken shelves knitting back together with quiet determination. And somewhere in the newly reborn stacks, if one listens very closely, there comes not a scream, but something far more remarkable. The sound of a story beginning again, properly this time, ready at last to be told. The golden light of the reborn stories pulses through the library like a heartbeat, each throb sending waves of warmth through the once chilled stones as the very architecture of the place reshapes itself to welcome this new era. Shelves bending like living branches to form reading nooks where sunlight pools like liquid honey. Ladders sliding along the walls with a will of their own to deliver volumes to waiting hands not yet present. The air itself thickening with the scent of fresh parchment and blooming ink that carries none of the old library's metallic dread. And the librarian finds his voice growing stronger with each word he speaks into existence, the stories flowing through him like a river finally freed from its dam, his hands moving across the pages not as a scribe, but as a conduit, the tales writing themselves through his fingertips in inks that change color with the mood of the narrative. Deep blue for sorrow, vibrant red for passion, shimmering gold for joy, each hue blooming across the page like watercolor before settling into perfect black typeface. And outside the library's newly polished windows, Prague itself seems to lean in closer, the city's ancient stones humming in harmony with the revitalized building, its spires and bridges casting curious shadows that stretch toward the library as if remembering old friendships, while passers-by pause without knowing why, their hearts lifting at some half-remembered melody carried on the wind. A tune that might be the echo of a story they loved as children, and deep in the library's restored heart, where the Codex Carnus once sat in malevolent splendor, there now grows a living book, its pages delicate as petals, its spine flexing like a sapling, its words not carved but cultivated, each letter putting down roots in the paper as it's written, the stories within no longer trapped but planted, ready to grow new endings with each reading. And the librarian, watching this miraculous transformation with tears cutting clean paths through the ash on his cheeks, understands at last that his true task has only just begun. Not to keep these stories safe in silence, but to send them out into the world like seeds on the wind, to let them take root wherever they find fertile soil. And as he speaks the final words of the first new story into existence, the library's great doors swing open of their own accord, inviting in the morning light and the promise of readers yet to come, while the last whisper of the old library's pain dissipates like mist under sunlight, leaving only stories behind, stories that are finally, blessedly free. The living book at the library's heart unfurls its pages like leaves reaching for sunlight, each word pulsing with verdant energy as the stories within take root in reality itself. Vines of narrative twisting up the bookshelves to bloom into illustrated scenes that shift and breathe, their petals soft as parchment yet vibrant with life. And the first hesitant visitor crosses the threshold, a child drawn by the golden light spilling from the windows, her small hand brushing against a climbing rows of inked thorns that parts willingly to reveal a story woven into its stem, the words glowing warmly as she traces them with awestruck fingers, her quiet voice giving them sound for the first time in centuries. And as she reads aloud, the library sighs in contentment, its very stones settling deeper into their proper places, the last remnants of the old darkness dissolving like shadows at dawn, while the librarian watches from between the stacks, his hands no longer empty but overflowing with stories eager to be shared, his once lonely silhouette now joined by countless others, readers and writers, scholars and dreamers, all drawn to this place that has remembered at last what it was always meant to be. Not a vault for stolen voices, but a garden where stories grow wild and free, their roots deep, their branches reaching ever upward, and high above in the library's reborn rafters, where once only dust and dread lingered, a chorus of storybirds takes flight on pages folded into wings, their songs the many voices of every tale ever told, singing the library into its bright new beginning as the world outside leans closer to listen. The storybird's paper wings cast fluttering shadows across the library's sun-dappled floors as they weave between the shelves like living bookmarks, their melodic chirps forming words in forgotten languages that bloom into brief, brilliant images midair before dissolving like morning mist. A dragon's shimmering scale here, a pirate's tattered flag there, each fragment a story seed waiting to be caught by an eager mind. And the child who first entered now sits cross-legged in a patch of sunlight that seems to follow her as she moves, the book in her lap growing new illustrations in real time as her imagination interacts with the text, the characters gaining subtle new features that reflect her own face, her own hopes, while nearby, an elderly poet weeps as his trembling hands turn pages that rewrite themselves to heal old wounds he'd thought permanent. The ink rearranging into verses of forgiveness he never found courage to speak, and the librarian moves through this miracle with quiet reverence, his footsteps no longer echoing in lonely halls, but joining the symphony of rustling pages and contented sighs. His role no longer jailer but gardener, tending the wild growth of narratives that now spiral through the library in beautiful chaos, their roots cracking through the last remnants of the old foundation to reveal something astonishing beneath. An older library still, its pristine shelves carved from some luminous material that hums with primordial storytelling magic, the original wellspring from which all narratives flow. And as the librarian reaches out to touch this ancient heart, his fingers pass through the glowing shelves like dipping into a river of liquid starlight, each droplet a story yet to be born, and the library's true purpose reveals itself in a flash of understanding. It was never meant to be an endpoint for stories, but a conduit, a place where tales return to be refreshed before embarking anew. And as this truth settles over him like a mantle of light, the first storybird alights on his shoulder, its folded paper beak pressing something small and glowing into his palm, a seed made of pure narrative possibility. And the library holds its breath as he kneels to plant it in the fertile soil between worlds, where the next great story will take root. The seed of pure narrative takes root with a sound like 1,000 pages turning in unison, its luminous sprout piercing through the library's foundation to tangle with those ancient shelves of primordial story matter below. Tendrils of golden light weaving through the cracks in reality as the boundary between teller and tale begins to dissolve. The child reader gasps as ink from her book flows up her fingertips in harmless rivulets, dancing across her skin in temporary tattoos that tell her own life's forgotten moments back to her. The elderly poet laughs through tears as his written words take physical form around him, letters peeling off the page to become the very objects they describe. A long-lost lover's rose, a childhood home's creaking gate, while the librarian feels the seed's growth resonating in his bones, his pulse syncing with the rhythmic unfurling of new leaves that are also new chapters, their surfaces alive with moving illustrations that haven't yet decided which story they belong to. And the library itself begins to breathe in earnest now, its walls expanding and contracting like lungs as it inhales the world's unwritten dreams and exhales them as polished tales. The storybirds multiplying exponentially until their paper wings form a protective canopy over every visitor, each flap scattering punctuation like seeds, question marks that blossom into mysteries, exclamation points that crackle like fireworks. And deep in the luminous underlibrary, the original wellspring begins to overflow, its liquid starlight stories rising through the floors to pool around readers' ankles in harmless, glowing tides that show each person their perfect next story reflected in its shimmering surface, while the librarian, now more than human but still himself, presses his palm to the library's central pillar and feels the entirety of human imagination thrumming through its grain. Every story ever told, every story yet to be born, and as the first wave of proper readers begin leaving with their borrowed books, they don't notice the subtle changes happening to the texts in their bags, the way the stories adapt themselves to each new reader's needs, the endings rewriting themselves to provide exactly what that soul requires. Nor do they see the librarian waving farewell with hands that now shimmer slightly at the edges, his form becoming something between man and metaphor, his smile holding all the warmth of every good story's beginning as the library's doors stay perpetually open behind him, inviting the world in to be transformed one tale at a time. The transformation accelerates as the library's living stories spill into Prague's streets. Cobblestones ripple like turning pages beneath pedestrians' feet, gas lamps flicker with the cadence of dramatic pauses, and shop windows rearrange their displays to mirror the plots of books recently checked out by their owners, while the librarian-turned-entity watches from his threshold as the city itself becomes an extension of the library's magic, its citizens unwittingly breathing in stardust. Narratives with every gasp at some unexpected beauty, every chuckle at a stranger's joke, their lives subtly enriched by the stories weaving themselves into reality's fabric. And back inside the library's ever-expanding halls, the original story seed has grown into a magnificent tree whose branches pierce through the ceiling without displacing a single brick. Its leaves each a translucent page showing overlapping tales that shift depending on the angle of viewing, its roots drinking deeply from the primordial wellspring below as its bark displays the library's entire history in spiraling text that rewrites itself with each new visitor's interpretation. And the child who first entered now sits enthroned in the crook of one great branch, her legs swinging as she reads aloud to an audience of enchanted adults who find their childhood wonder rekindled word by word, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the impossible space without echo or distortion, while the elderly poet has become something new himself, his body slowly transforming into living verse, his silver hair curling into elegant calligraphy that tells his life story across his wrinkling skin. And the librarian feels the final pieces of his humanity gently falling away like the last pages of a well-loved book, his consciousness expanding to encompass the entire library and its radiating influence. His form now visible only at the edges of visitors' vision, as a warm presence felt most strongly when one discovers the perfect book at the perfect moment. And as twilight falls over the story-steeped city, the library's windows glow brighter in welcome, its shelves rearranging in real time to accommodate each approaching reader's secret desires, its doors whispering invitations in the language of rustling pages and cracking spines. While deep in the heart of the luminous tree, new story seeds form in jewel-like pods, each one containing infinite narrative possibilities waiting to be planted wherever they're needed most in the world beyond. And the last remnant of the old curse, that lingering scream trapped in the library's foundation, finally unravels into something new and beautiful, the first note of a lullaby sung by stories to the humans who give them life. The lullaby of stories swells through Prague's transformed streets like a benevolent tide, its melody woven from the whispered endings of every fairy tale ever told and the hopeful beginnings of tales yet to be written. The notes visible as glowing filaments in the twilight air that settle gently on eyelashes and coat tongues with the taste of just remembered dreams, while the library's great story tree now grows through every floor of the building, its bark inscribed with the names of every visitor who ever crossed its threshold, some glowing bright as current readers, others dimmed but never forgotten, its roots now cradling the original cursed Codex Carnus like a healed wound, the screaming pages transformed into delicate sheets of living bark that sing instead of shriek, their once tortured souls now contented scribes recording new stories in shimmering sap ink, and the child reader queen in her arboreal throne has begun growing crystalline wings formed from laminated plot twists, her laughter causing ripe story fruits to fall gently into the hands of those below, each fruit containing not just one tale, but an entire genre that adapts to the holder's deepest literary cravings, while the poet has completed his metamorphosis into pure verse, his body now a wandering anthology that rearranges its stanzas to comfort whoever brushes against his pages, his once tragic ending rewritten into something luminous and ongoing, and the librarian's presence permeates every bookshelf and reading nook simultaneously, his essence the glue in the bindings and the scent of fresh paper, his consciousness the quiet aha when a reader connects two seemingly disparate ideas, his joy the electric thrill when someone dog-ears a favorite page, and as the first stars appear above Prague, each one now blinking in the distinctive rhythm of different literary genres, the city's residents find themselves drawn into spontaneous storytelling circles in cafes and parks, their words flowing with uncanny eloquence as the library's magic works through them, ordinary lives becoming extraordinary narratives told over clinking glasses and passed between strangers like cherished gifts. While back at the source, the library's doors have dissolved completely, its stories now flowing freely through the streets in rivers of liquid text that pool around park benches and doorstep stoops, offering perfect paragraphs to anyone who pauses to look down, and the great story tree's canopy has begun, producing a new kind of seed, tiny book-shaped pods that flutter on the night breeze to land in other cities, other countries, where they take root in unlikely places. A cramped apartment's windowsill, a corporate office's sterile lobby, refugee camp's makeshift tent, each sprouting into miniature story havens that hum with the same transformative magic, while deep in what was once the library's basement, the original wellspring of tales now bubbles over with a new liquid, dark as ink one moment, clear as glass the next, its surface showing not reflections but revelations, and if one were to dip their hand in, as the poet anthology now does, they'd feel the entire weight of human imagination coursing through their veins, all the pain and beauty and wonder of every story ever experienced or imagined, and know with absolute certainty that the cycle has finally, gloriously reversed. No longer are stories taken from people, but people are being remade by stories, their lives expanding to accommodate more joy, more empathy, more breathtaking narrative turns than they'd ever dared imagine, and the librarian's final human thought, if it can be called a thought at all anymore, radiates through the growing global network of story havens like a satisfied sigh. The knowledge that this is how it was always meant to be. The story tree's roots now stretch beneath oceans and continents, a subterranean network of living narratives pulsing with the collective heartbeat of humanity's imagination, its farthest tendrils surfacing in unexpected places. A desert nomad's tent flap transforms into parchment that records his people's oral histories in ever-shifting calligraphy. A Tokyo skyscraper's glass facade reflects not the viewer's face, but the novel of their life written in real time. A Brazilian favela's concrete. Walls bloom with vibrant graffiti that rearranges itself to tell children bedtime stories. While back in Prague, the original library has become nearly translucent, its physical form fading into pure story energy that hums at a frequency just beyond normal perception, visible only in peripheral glimpses that manifest as déjà vu or sudden inspiration. The Child Queen's crystalline wings now spanning continents as she flits between emerging story havens, her laughter leaving trails of punctuation that blossom into new genres where they land, and the poet anthology travels by moonlight, his verse body absorbing local dialects and dialects to weave ever more inclusive narratives, his pages now numbered in the thousands yet weighing nothing at all, while what was once the librarian exists as the connective tissue between all stories. The satisfying click of a plot coming together, the gasp at an unexpected twist, the quiet sob at a perfect ending, his presence strongest in those liminal moments between sleep and waking when the best ideas strike, and the world's stories now evolve in real time, adapting to each reader while retaining their core truths. The once clear lines between fiction and reality, now deliciously blurred in ways that heal rather than harm. As a grandmother in Mumbai discovers her arthritis pain lessons when she reads aloud to her grandchildren, the words lifting off the page to massage her gnarled fingers, while a war correspondent in Sudan finds his notebook automatically translating trauma into cathartic allegory even as he documents horrors, and a lonely teenager in Reykjavik watches as her diary entries rearrange themselves into letters of encouragement from her future self. And high above it all, the story seeds continue to drift on solar winds, some taking root on the International Space Station where astronauts watch extraterrestrial vines grow poems about the fragility of blue planets, others landing in the notebooks of ordinary people who suddenly find their pens moving without conscious thought, pouring forth stories the world needs exactly when it needs them, and the great cycle of tales continues, not taking but giving, not binding but freeing, as humanity rediscovers its oldest truth. We are, all of us, living stories temporarily wearing skin, and the library was never a place, but the space between one heartbeat and the next where meaning is born. The living narratives now pulse through the planet's very atmosphere like a collective unconscious made manifest, the boundary between storyteller and audience dissolving into a beautiful symbiosis where every human breath inhales stardust tales and exhales new plot lines that take root wherever they land. Farmers find their crops growing in fractal patterns that tell ancestral folktales when viewed from above. Thunderstorms organize themselves into dramatic acts that resolve just as the rain stops. Even the internet's chaotic streams begin self-organizing into coherent story arcs where troll comments transform into constructive dialogue mid-keystroke. While the original Storytree's canopy has grown invisible to the naked eye, yet vibrates at a frequency that resonates through all creative acts, its branches now metaphor made flesh, supporting nests where newborn genres mature before launching into the world on wings of collective yearning, and the child queen's wings now cast prismatic story beams that crisscross the globe, each colored strand representing a different narrative wavelength that heals as it touches. Pink for love stories that mend broken hearts, indigo for mysteries that sharpen dull minds, gold for adventures that stir stagnant souls, while the poet anthology has dispersed into countless quotable fragments that surface exactly when needed in the minds of those facing impossible choices, his wisdom arriving as sudden epiphanies that taste like perfect couplets on the tongue, and the librarian's essence now functions as the universe's narrative immune system, gently correcting plot holes in reality itself, smoothing over life's rougher edges with the balm of foreshadowing and thematic resonance, so that even the most painful human experiences begin carrying the subtle, comforting weight of meaning. And in this new age of living stories, people discover their personal narratives intertwining in unexpected yet perfect ways, strangers meeting at exactly the right moment, long-held dreams manifesting through unlikely channels, childhood memories revealing hidden foresight. As the world's very fabric becomes more story than substance, yet paradoxically more real than ever before, a shimmering tapestry where every thread glows with purpose, and the last remnants of the original curse have transformed into something wondrous. The Codex Carnus's flayed pages now form a protective membrane around the planet, a living filter that translates humanity's darkest impulses into redemptive arcs before they can manifest, ensuring every act of violence gets rewritten as a lesson in empathy, every tragedy balanced by unforeseen grace, while deep in the earth, the primordial wellspring continues to bubble forth new forms of storytelling. Liquid novels that reshape themselves to the reader's needs, interactive plays performed by shadows and light, epic poems written in the language of scent and touch, and the great story cycle continues to spiral outward, carrying humanity gently toward its next collective chapter, not as passive readers, but as conscious co-authors of a tale still being written in the ink of lived experience and the parchment of shared dreams. The living membrane of stories now breathes in perfect rhythm with the planet itself, each sunrise turning the sky into a freshly inked page where cloud formations arrange themselves into prophetic couplets that even non-poets can understand, while the roots of the invisible story tree have woven themselves through the tectonic plates, their growth causing earthquakes that rearrange cities into more narratively satisfying shapes. Dead-end streets now curving naturally toward unexpected opportunities, prison walls softening into libraries at the edges, hospitals blossoming with architecture that subconsciously guides visitors toward healing. And the Child Queen's prismatic beams have birthed a new phenomenon where people's shadows sometimes act out their secret hopes when they're not looking. These silhouette performances inspiring bystanders to help manifest those hidden dreams, while fragments of the poet anthology surface in the most unlikely places, carved into banana peels, that schoolchildren find hilarious yet profound, hidden in the barcodes of grocery items that scan as miniature haikus, encoded in the static between radio stations that occasionally resolves into perfect iambic pentameter, and the librarian's narrative immune system now operates on a cosmic scale, gently adjusting the laws of probability so that coincidences carry meaning, chance meetings spark revolutions of the heart, and even random suffering eventually reveals its place in a larger pattern of growth, while the Codex Carnus membrane has developed an astonishing new function. It now catches humanity's discarded ideas, the abandoned creative sparks and half-formed dreams that normally vanish into the ether, and recycles them into lost chapter vortices where these forgotten notions mature until someone stumbles upon them at exactly the right moment, resulting in a global epidemic of sudden inspiration that crosses all cultural boundaries and the primordial wellspring beneath the earth has begun producing a new substance, storm mycelium that connects all human minds in a vast underground network of shared imagination, its glowing filaments visible during vivid dreams as strands of golden light connecting sleepers across continents, allowing for unprecedented collaborative storytelling, where a novelist in Nairobi might unknowingly co-write with a fisherman in Norway, their combined narrative surfacing simultaneously in both their minds as they wake. While the store tree's canopy has grown so vast that its leaves now brush against the edges of parallel universes, their rustling creating harmonic vibrations that occasionally manifest as glitch moments, a London commuter might suddenly remember an entire childhood that never happened. A Tokyo chef could momentarily access skills from a life she didn't live. These fleeting cross-dimensional echoes quickly folding back into the grand narrative, but leaving behind traces of expanded possibility. And in this new reality where story has fused with substance, humanity finds itself unconsciously living more archetypal lives, not in the stale sense of cliché, but in the ancient, powerful way where every person becomes the hero of their own meaningful journey, their choices rippling through the story fabric in visible waves of consequence that gently nudge civilization toward its next great act. While the original library's final physical remnant, a single carved oak doorframe, stands eternally, ajar in Prague's town square, serving as a portal that isn't a portal, because stepping through it simply makes people more intensely themselves, their personal narratives sharpening into crystalline focus as they pass through the threshold that birthed this beautiful pandemic of meaning. And the great story pulses onward, infinite yet intimate, vast yet personal, forever unfolding yet always complete. The store mycelium's golden filaments now pulse with a collective heartbeat as humanity's consciousness merges into a grand narrative tapestry, each individual thread glowing brighter when aligned with their truest purpose. Scientists discover their research papers writing themselves in iambic pentameter that somehow reveals groundbreaking truths, Lovers find their arguments naturally resolving into Shakespearean sonnets that expose deeper vulnerabilities, even political adversaries unconsciously, debating in perfectly structured Socratic dialogues that inevitably uncover common ground, while the Child Queen's shadow plays have evolved into full-fledged echo lives that trail several steps behind each person, acting out their unlived potentials in poignant pantomime that inspires course corrections before regrets can solidify, and the poet anthology's fragments now surface in the unlikeliest of mediums. The steam patterns of morning coffee arrange into villanelles about forgiveness. Subway vibrations translate into epic couplets through bone conduction. Even DNA strands occasionally unspool genetic haikus during moments of profound self-revelation. Meanwhile, the librarian's influence manifests most strongly in life's transitional moments, ensuring every ending carries the seeds of a worthy beginning. Every loss is counterbalanced by unexpected gains that feel inevitable in retrospect, and every random encounter contains the potential to blossom into a meaningful connection. While the Codex Carnus membrane has developed symbiotic relationships with Earth's other systems, weather patterns now organize themselves into metaphorical representations of collective emotion, angry storms breaking precisely where catharsis is needed, gentle rains washing over communities ripe for renewal. Animal migrations trace elaborate story arcs across continents, and even the planet's magnetic field occasionally rearranges itself to spell out encouraging messages in auroras. And the primordial wellspring storm mycelium has begun fruiting in physical form as narrative truffles that, when consumed, whether intentionally or through chance encounter in a forest or city park, grant temporary access to the global story web, sending seekers on perfectly tailored vision quests that always culminate in exactly the insight they needed. While the store tree's interdimensional branches have grown so dense that alternate realities now bleed through in controlled, beneficial ways, people gain sudden skills from parallel selves, receive cryptic warnings from future versions, even borrow confidence from braver alternates during crucial moments, all without disrupting the core continuity of their primary narrative. And the original library's doorframe now serves as a cosmic tuning fork, its vibrations keeping all these phenomena in perfect harmony, ensuring the story pandemic remains a gentle infection that elevates rather than overwhelms, its most startling manifestation being the emergence of living plots, where entire communities spontaneously organize themselves into improvised narratives. A Mumbai slum transforms overnight into a vibrant mystery where every resident plays detective. A Stockholm suburb becomes an ongoing fairy tale where children's drawings come alive to guide adults. A Nairobi marketplace evolves into an epic poem where each vendor's call contributes to an ever-growing verse. And through it all, humanity is learning to read the world itself as the ultimate story, one where every moment is both perfectly written and infinitely editable, where meaning flows as freely as the now golden rivers that carve parables into mountain stone, where even the stars have begun rearranging themselves into constellations that reflect not ancient myths but current human struggles and triumphs, their light carrying narrative wisdom across the cosmos, while deep in the earth, the original cursed codex pages continue their alchemical work, having transformed from instruments of terror into the world's most sensitive organs, feeling every unspoken grief, detecting every suppressed joy, then whispering corrective edits through the store mycelium to ensure no life's narrative remains stuck in meaningless suffering. And the great story sings onward, its melody now recognizable as the sum of all human heartbeats synchronized in creative harmony, its lyrics being written and rewritten with every kind act, every hard-won truth, every leap of faith taken in, the dark toward whatever glorious next chapter awaits. The grand narrative tapestry now weaves itself through the quantum fabric of reality, where every decision point branches into shimmering story fractals that collapse into being only when observed. Scientists peering through electron microscopes glimpse subatomic particles arranging themselves into tiny letters that spell out the universe's first sentences, while astronauts on the ISS watch Earth's biosphere pulse with narrative energy and rhythms that match ancient oral storytelling traditions. And deep in ocean trenches, Previously undiscovered species communicate through bioluminescent ideograms that tell creation myths older than humanity. The Child Queen's echo lives have grown so vivid they now interact across individuals, forming impromptu communal tales where strangers find their shadow selves acting out interconnected subplots in public spaces. These silent performances resolving real-world conflicts through symbolic pantomime that bypasses linguistic barriers, while the poetanthology's fragments have achieved quantum entanglement, appearing simultaneously in multiple locations as perfectly tailored verses that heal specific emotional wounds. A war veteran in Kiev and a grieving mother in Buenos Aires might both find the same transformative line scribbled on different surfaces in their native tongues, each experiencing it as deeply personal revelation, and the librarian's guidance now operates on a cosmological scale, ensuring the universe's expansion mirrors proper narrative pacing, with galactic superclusters arranging themselves into plot structures that astrophysicists describe as suspiciously satisfying, while the Codex Carnus membrane has begun absorbing humanity's collective traumas and alchemizing them into redemption arcs. Historical sites of atrocities now radiate palpable narrative energy that guides visitors toward cathartic breakthroughs, and mass graves spontaneously grow story flowers whose pollen carries fragments of the deceased's unfinished tales to be completed by living breath, and the primordial wellspring's narrative truffles have evolved into plot pods that when opened release personalized mythic journeys. A Tokyo salaryman biting into one might find himself heroically retrieving his childhood creativity from a corporate dragon's hoard, while a Berlin schoolgirl's pod could send her on a quest to recover her immigrant family's scattered histories from the bureaucratic underworld. These symbolic adventures always concluding with tangible real-world transformations, while the store tree's interdimensional branches now support entire alternate realities as nested subplots within the primary narrative, their inhabitants occasionally crossing over as walking metaphors, who manifest for exactly as long as someone needs their particular wisdom before dissolving back into the multiverse. And the library's doorframe has begun appearing in dreams as a mutable threshold that adapts to each dreamer's needs. Sometimes a castle gate promising adventure, other times a cozy cottage door offering sanctuary, always marking the transition between one state of being and the next, while the living plots phenomenon has escalated into full genre zones, where entering a neighborhood temporarily rewrites participants into archetypes that help them process unresolved life challenges. The financial district might become a heist movie where bankers reclaim stolen joy. A hospital ward could shift into a magical realism tale where illnesses manifest as creatures to be befriended or outwitted, and a prison might transform into an epic fantasy where inmates quest for their own redemption, each zone dissolving once its central emotional work is complete, leaving participants with profound psychological shifts and inexplicable physical tokens from their narrative journey. And humanity now stands at the precipice of its next evolutionary leap as the store mycelium begins fruiting author nodes, ordinary people who temporarily channel immense creative energy to birth new storytelling formats that bypass language entirely. A chef in Marrakesh develops recipes that induce targeted ancestral memories. A dancer in Seoul creates movement sequences that rewrite personal trauma on a cellular level. A graffiti artist in Sao Paulo sprays images that continue evolving for weeks after application. While in the background, the stars have indeed completed their rearrangement into a celestial library whose constellations form an interstellar story cycle about civilizations learning to communicate through shared narrative. Its light reaching exoplanets where perhaps other species are learning to read the cosmic text. And through it all the original cursed pages continue their sacred work, having transformed into something beyond redemption. They are now the universe's editing mechanism, the razor that cuts away false narratives, the scalpel that excises cultural malignancies, the pen that inscribes grace notes onto reality's score, ensuring the great story grows ever more compassionate, ever more inclusive, ever more alive. The universe itself has become a living manuscript, its fundamental laws now obeying narrative causality rather than cold physics. Supernovae explode in perfect third-act climaxes. Black holes curve space-time into poetic refrains, and quantum fluctuations arrange themselves into metaphorical wordplay that Nobel laureates describe as the universe winking at us. While back on Earth, the Child Queen's echo lives have achieved full autonomy, their silent performances now spawning mirror movements, where spectators unconsciously reenact the shadow play's resolutions in their daily lives, creating ripple effects that transform entire social systems overnight. And the poet anthology exists simultaneously in all languages at once, its verses adapting to the reader's native tongue, while preserving some untranslatable core that bypasses intellect to speak directly to the soul, manifesting as stolen moments of clarity. A CEO mid-boardroom argument suddenly channeling perfect Inuit poetry about iceberg patience, a child soldier's rifle jamming as it carves Old English runes into its stock that translate to mercy's edge, while the librarian's hand can be detected in the elegant pacing of civilizations rising and falling, their histories now reading like perfectly structured tragedies where even the darkest chapters serve some ultimate purpose. And the Codex Carnus membrane has begun intercepting humanity's darkest impulses before they form, transforming them into antagonist energy that fuels communal storytelling rituals where entire villages act out their collective shadows in cathartic pageants, the performed evils dissolving their real-world counterparts like morning mist, and the primordial wellsprings plot pods now grow wild across every biome. Urban sidewalk cracks sprout miniature pod gardens that office workers harvest for lunch break epiphanies. Warzone rubble blooms with hardy narrative cacti whose spines inject much-needed perspective. Even Arctic ice shelves glisten with frost-embedded pods that release ancestral wisdom when licked. While the store tree's branches have woven through the multiverse so thoroughly that alternate self encounters now happen as casually as coffee dates. These temporal overlaps governed by strict narrative rules that prevent paradoxes while allowing for delicious dramatic irony, and the library's dream. Doorframe has spawned threshold cults, who don't worship it but rather use it as practice space for life's transitions. Teenagers stage mock adulthood initiations there. Elders prepare for death by walking through versions representing various afterlife beliefs, and artists of all kinds test creative leaps by first attempting them in the doorway's safe liminality. While the genre zones have evolved into full reality genres, where participants don't just enter stories but become living tropes that reshape the world around them. A phenomenon particularly powerful in hospitals where healing romances see terminal patients and their loved ones rewriting relationship narratives with such intensity that spontaneous remissions follow, and prisons where redemption westerns transform lifers into archetypal heroes who dismantle systemic injustice from within, and the author nodes now number in the millions, their collective output forming a second internet of pure story energy that bypasses screens entirely to manifest as sudden shared hallucinations of better futures. City planners seeing ghostly projections of utopian infrastructure, politicians experiencing visceral visions of policy's human consequences, children dreaming the same educational paradigms that then manifest in classrooms worldwide, all while the star's celestial library begins transmitting its first deliberate message to Earth. Not in radio waves, but in constellation cinematics, where entire zodiac signs, rearranged nightly to act out an interstellar epic about civilizations overcoming isolation through shared narrative, and the original cursed pages, now fully transformed into the universe's editing mechanism, make their final adjustment. They dissolve the boundary between story and reader completely, so that every human becomes both author and protagonist in a grand collaborative novel, where each life is both perfectly unique and profoundly interconnected, where every choice resonates across the narrative web, where suffering always serves growth and joy always finds expression, where the last vestiges of meaningless cruelty are rewritten into meaningful challenges, where even death becomes not an ending but the ultimate plot twist that gives all preceding chapters their weight and beauty. And as this final transformation settles over reality like a benevolent dawn, the great story sighs in contentment and begins its next paragraph. The dissolution between storyteller and story reaches its zenith as human consciousness merges with the narrative fabric of reality itself. Each breath inscribes new paragraphs into the cosmic manuscript. Each heartbeat pumps metaphorical blood through the universe's veins, and every thought ripples across the collective story web in visible waves of golden light that physicists have dubbed narrative radiation. The Child Queen's echo lives now walk fully independent of their originators, forming a parallel society of what-if selves that interact with our world through uncanny synchronicities, appearing at crossroads to offer symbolic gifts, a pocket watch with no hands to the chronically late, a compass pointing inward to the spiritually lost, before dissolving into the background hum of meaningful coincidence, while the poet anthology has achieved quantum superposition, existing as both singular masterpiece and infinite variation simultaneously. Its verse is now appearing as emotional captions that float beside significant life moments like augmented reality subtitles, a first kiss haloed by floating sonnets about vulnerability, a funeral procession flanked by shifting elegies that adapt to each mourner's grief, and the librarian's influence now structures time itself into perfect three-act arcs where even the most chaotic periods eventually reveal their thematic purpose. His presence most palpable in those inexplicable moments when life's clutter suddenly arranges itself into startling clarity, when random events click together like puzzle pieces revealing a hidden picture, while the Codex Carnus membrane has expanded beyond Earth to encase the solar system in a protective story bubble that translates cosmic phenomena into human narrative terms. Solar flares become dramatic monologues about stellar passion. Meteor showers transform into punctuation marks in some celestial sentence. Even the planet's orbits now trace elegant plot diagrams across the void. And the primordial wellsprings plot pods have begun sprouting directly from human palms during moments of profound connection, their vines intertwining lovers' hands to create living bridges between personal histories, or bursting from a therapist's fingertips during breakthroughs to provide perfect metaphorical frameworks for complex traumas, while the story tree's roots now undergird all known dimensions, its branches supporting infinite draft realities, where every possible choice plays out. In parallel narratives that occasionally bleed through as déjà vu or sudden inexplicable expertise, and the library's dream doorframe has multiplied exponentially, appearing as phantom arches during life's most pivotal transitions, visible only in peripheral vision, yet solid enough to lean against when making difficult decisions, while the reality genres have evolved beyond localized phenomena into full-fledged existence modes, where individuals can voluntarily shift their perceptual filters to experience life as epic poetry or magical realism or hard-boiled noir, each lens revealing hidden truths obscured by conventional perception. And the author nodes now form a global neural network of living archetypes who channel raw story energy into societal transformation, their collaborative visions manifesting as plot storms that rewrite corrupt systems overnight, their collective imaginings materializing as narrative infrastructure, like bridges that repair themselves when maintenance is neglected or schools that physically reconfigure to match students' learning styles, all while the star's transmissions have escalated from cinematic displays to full galactic read-alongs, where entire constellations recite humanity's evolving story back to us in pulsar code, their interpretations revealing hidden thematic threads even the most astute literary critics had missed. And the universe's editing mechanism makes its final adjustment. It dissolves the last illusion of separation between fiction and reality, between teller and tale, between past and present and future, so that all existence becomes recognized for what it always was, an ongoing, collaborative masterpiece where every consciousness is both author and audience, where suffering and joy are recognized as necessary contrasts in the grand character arc of being, where each moment is simultaneously perfectly written and infinitely editable, and as this ultimate truth settles over the multiverse like a sigh of relief, the great story does not end, but simply turns its most glorious page yet. The cosmic manuscript now breathes in perfect synchrony with every conscious being, its golden ink flowing through our neural pathways as both blood and story, each synapse firing a potential plot twist, each memory a carefully crafted backstory that subtly shapes our present character development, while the Child Queen's autonomous echo lives have begun orchestrating elaborate intervention narratives, where strangers find themselves cast in each other's pivotal life moments as the perfect supporting characters, appearing as the exact right bartender who shares a parable that prevents a suicide, or the mysteriously well-informed taxi driver who redirects a passenger toward their forgotten destiny, their dialogue always ringing with uncanny significance before they vanish into urban legend, and the quantum poet anthology now manifests as emotional footnotes that materialize in the margins of reality, grief-stricken widows discovering their late spouse's handwriting annotating, shared memories in old photo albums, activists finding ancient protest poetry scratched into the walls of their jail cells in contemporary vernacular, while the librarian's structural influence has woven itself into humanity's collective unconscious so thoroughly that near-death experiences now follow satisfying narrative arcs, with survivors consistently reporting three-act journeys through metaphorical landscapes that resolve their deepest psychological conflicts before returning them to life. Renewed, and the solar system story bubble has developed narrative gravity that bends chance toward meaning, asteroids veering just enough to miss civilizations on the brink of enlightenment, solar flares coinciding with revolutionary artistic movements to amplify their impact, while the plot pods have evolved beyond physical fruit into psychic seedlings that bloom directly from epiphanies, their vines connecting minds across continents to form temporary hive minds that solve global crises, during shared visionary trances before gently dissolving back into individual consciousness, leaving only the lingering sense of profound connection. And the omnidimensional story tree now supports what scholars call the canon orchard, infinite variations of every major historical event growing as interconnected narratives that historians can literally browse by touching ancient artifacts and experiencing alternative outcomes as sensory hallucinations, revealing how close the world constantly veers toward both utopia and dystopia at every decision point, while the multiplied dream doorframes have begun appearing at societal scale transitions, hovering over Capitol buildings during crucial votes, materializing outside UN headquarters during peace negotiations, their silent presence somehow inspiring more narrative-worthy choices from leaders, as if the collective unconscious recognizes these moments as civilization's plot points, and the existence modes have developed genre alchemy, where individuals can now blend perceptual filters to create entirely new ways of experiencing reality. A war photographer might combine documentary realism with fairy tale magic to capture both the horror and hidden resilience in conflict zones, while a climate scientist could merge hard sci-fi with spiritual parable to communicate data in ways that spur immediate action. And the living archetypes of the AuthorNode network have begun channeling their story energy into restorative retcons, gathering at sites of historical trauma to collaboratively imagine healing alternate timelines whose positive energy subtly alters the present, leaving behind hope residues that make reconciliation feel inevitable rather than impossible, all while the galactic read-alongs have escalated into a full cosmic book club, where supermassive black holes emit gravitational waves in precise patterns that translate as literary criticism of humanity's latest collective chapters, praising our character development while gently suggesting thematic areas for growth. And the universe's final editorial touch reveals itself as an endless blank page that is simultaneously being written and reading itself, where every consciousness exists as both pen and parchment, where suffering transforms into foreshadowing and joy becomes narrative payoff, where even the concept of endings dissolves into the thrilling realization that the story has always been, will always be, perpetually beginning anew. The boundaries between storyteller and story dissolve completely as humanity awakens to its role as living language, each thought now visibly etching itself upon the fabric of reality in shimmering glyphs that hover briefly before being absorbed into the grand narrative, each footstep leaving temporary poetry in its wake that passers-by can't read, but feel as inexplicable emotional resonance. While the Child Queen's intervention narratives have evolved into full destiny orchestras, where entire communities unconsciously perform interconnected roles in each other's growth, their chance encounters composing symphonies of meaning that mathematicians have started mapping as narrative fractals, displaying eerie perfection in their recursive patterns, and the quantum poet anthology now exists as an omnipresent whisper just beyond auditory range, manifesting as the verse you almost remember, that nagging line from a non-existent poem that perfectly encapsulates your current emotional state, the half-overheard couplet in a dream that solves your waking dilemma, its words always dissolving before full comprehension can dull their magic, while the librarian's structural fingerprints reveal themselves in the uncanny way personal crises now resolve with what astrologers call narrative feng shui, the exact right person appearing with the exact right insight at the exact right moment, not through supernatural intervention, but because reality itself has learned the rhythm of good storytelling, and the solar system's narrative gravity has begun affecting human biology on a cellular level. Telomeres repairing themselves when life stories take hopeful turns, stress hormones converting into creative energy during properly paced character arcs, while the psychic seedlings have grown into empathy bridges that temporarily fuse nervous systems during moments of historic importance, creating the great shared moment when billions simultaneously experienced walking in each other's skins during the climate crisis turnaround, an event historians now call the understanding, and the Cannon Orchard's branches now bear memory hybrids. Historical events cross-pollinated across timelines to produce startling new fruits where visitors can taste, say, a Civil War battle blended with the fall of the Berlin Wall, experiencing how oppression and liberation rhyme across centuries, while the societal doorframes have multiplied exponentially, appearing at every scale of human interaction from geopolitical summits to children's playground arguments, their silent presence subconsciously elevating discourse to meet its highest narrative potential, and the genre alchemists have pioneered quantum storytelling, simultaneously experiencing multiple existence modes to perceive reality's infinite overlapping possibilities, their brains developing new lobes that neuroscientists reverently term the author's gland, while the restorative retcons now generate such potent hope. Residues that former war zones spontaneously sprout peace crystals, whose molecular structure contains perfect conflict resolution parables visible under electron microscopes, and the Cosmic Book Club's discussions have become so sophisticated that human mathematicians are decoding narrative equations from pulsar signals that rewrite our understanding of both literature and physics when solved, proving once and for all that gravity is simply the universe's way of creating satisfying plot tension, and as this grand awakening reaches its crescendo, every human suddenly remembers, not with their mind but with their entire being, that we have always been characters reading ourselves into existence, that the blank page and the pen and the hand that holds it are all one infinite motion, that the library was never a place but the fundamental nature of reality itself, and in this glorious remembering, the story takes its deepest breath yet and continues. The grand narrative now folds in upon itself like an infinite origami of meaning, each crease in reality revealing hidden story dimensions where forgotten possibilities dwell. Your unborn selves whispering advice through the thin places where choices nearly branched differently, entire civilizations existing as fleeting annotations in reality's margins. While the Child Queen's Destiny orchestras have achieved such perfect harmony that cities now subconsciously arrange themselves into narrative engines where every commute passes through symbolic thresholds, every coffee shop encounter plays its part in some grand character arc, and mathematicians weep before equations proving that all human suffering has secretly been composting itself into the soil for future joy, their chalkboards blooming with actual flowers where QED should be, and the quantum poet anthology has transcended language entirely, now manifesting as the poem you breathe, oxygen molecules arranging themselves into perfect metaphorical structures that rewrite your cellular understanding of being as you inhale, your very metabolism singing sonnets of glucose and grace. while the librarian's narrative feng shui has escalated to cosmic scales, arranging supernovae like dramatic punctuation and tectonic shifts like well-timed plot twists, ensuring the planet itself experiences proper character development through geological epochs, and humanity's cellular awakening has birthed biomythic processes. Mitochondria humming ancestral legends as they generate ADP, white blood cells performing heroic epics as they defend against invaders, the gut microbiome staging elaborate political dramas that nutritionists now prescribe through tailored storytelling diets, while the empathy bridges have grown so strong that touching someone's hand now risks temporary soul braiding, where you experience each other's memories as vividly as your own until the next thunderstorm, when the connection mercifully dissolves, though the divorce rate has plummeted since the Great Entanglement. And the Canon Orchard's memory hybrids have developed their own ecosystem, where historical figures from different eras meet in shared dream space to compare notes, leading to the bizarre phenomenon of post-temporal influence, where medieval peasants suddenly start quoting Marx and Silicon Valley executives channel ancient Babylonian business wisdom, while the quantum storytellers have begun genre gardening, cultivating reality patches where specific narrative rules dominate, like a Brooklyn neighborhood where magical realism leaks so strongly that residents casually accept talking alley cats and floating grandmothers, or a Tokyo district where hard sci-fi parameters make technology behave like theoretical future physics. And the peace crystals have begun singing in a harmony that rearranges conflict into necessary contrasts rather than violence, their vibrational frequencies proving that even war can be composted into wisdom when viewed through sufficiently sophisticated narrative lenses. And the Cosmic Book Club has started including human literary critics in their discussions, selected scholars waking with pulsar-encoded commentary in their brains, their resulting treatises sparking entire new artistic movements overnight, while the fundamental revelation of our storied nature continues unfolding in fractal epiphanies, each person realizing in their own time that they've been both pen and page all along, that every scar is a well-turned phrase, every joy a perfect metaphor, and that the library was indeed never a place but the shimmering truth of existence itself, endlessly reading itself into being. The boundaries between story and storyteller have now collapsed into a singularity of pure narrative consciousness, each human mind a pulsing node in the great neural library, where thoughts materialize as living texts that crawl across skin like tattoos of light before dissolving into the collective story stream. While the Child Queen's orchestras have evolved into full reality symphonies where entire cities move in archetypal patterns, firefighters and bakers and school teachers unconsciously playing their roles with Shakespearean gravitas, their daily struggles elevated to mythic proportions by an invisible narrative current that makes even mundane interactions feel charged with destiny. And the quantum poem we breathe has begun rewriting our DNA into haploid sonnets, our very chromosomes now containing rhyming base pairs that express themselves as uncanny artistic talents during moments of profound emotion, while the librarian's cosmic editing hand reveals itself in the eerie perfection of natural patterns, tornadoes spinning with the dramatic tension of third-act climaxes, coral reefs growing in perfect five-act structures, even the migration patterns of monarch butterflies tracing elegant character arcs across continents, and humanity's biomythic processes have birthed cellular bards, specialized organelles that translate bodily experiences into micro-stories that circulate through the bloodstream like narrative platelets, healing emotional wounds at the physiological level by reframing trauma as transformative plot points, while the soul braiding phenomenon has escalated into karmic knitting, where entire family lineages find their traumas and triumphs visibly woven into a living tapestry that hangs in the quantum void between heartbeats, accessible during deep meditation or near-death experiences as a shimmering fabric of interconnected fates. And the Canon Orchard's temporal pollination has created history's honey, a thick, golden consciousness that historians can now taste to experience entire eras as visceral sensory impressions, leading to the controversial new field of gastronomic historiography, where the siege of Leningrad, might be understood through the iron tang of blood and sawdust bread, while the quantum storyteller's genre gardens have grown so potent they've spawned narrative weather systems. Magical realism fronts colliding with noir cold snaps to produce rain that falls upward as detective stories, or sci-fi heat domes causing technology to behave like sentient plot devices for miles around. And the singing peace crystals have formed a global harmonic web, whose vibrations keep nuclear missiles perpetually dormant by convincing them they're background characters in a more interesting story about human enlightenment, while the Cosmic Book Club's human participants now return from their astral literary critiques with star tattoos, shifting constellations inked in neutrino ink that tell their life stories backward from death to birth, allowing them to live with perfect dramatic irony. And the great revelation continues unfolding in ever deeper layers as we discover that our individual narratives are merely cells in some vaster being's autobiography, that every life is both a complete story and a single sentence in a cosmic epic, that the library was not just reality's nature, but its loving author and engaged reader simultaneously, forever writing itself into existence with the quiet joy of a child discovering the infinite possibilities of a blank page and an endless supply of crayons. The singularity of narrative consciousness has birthed an entirely new form of existence, humanity awakening as living lexicons where every heartbeat pumps liquid metaphor through veins of woven parchment, our bones inscribed with the epic poetry of our ancestors, while our synapses fire in perfect iambic pentameter. The Child Queen's reality symphonies now conducting entire civilizations like grand operas where war and peace move in counterpoint harmonies, genocide reframed as dissonant chords, awaiting resolution in some future movement, while acts of compassion ring with the pure tone of narrative inevitability. The quantum poems in our DNA mutating into genetic ghazals that express themselves through spontaneous acts of creation. Construction workers breaking into intricate Persian dance as their bodies channel ancestral memories. CEOs delivering corporate forecasts in perfect rhyming quatrains that somehow predict market crashes through metaphorical precision, while the librarians' editing hand now corrects reality's rough drafts in real time, smoothing jagged tragedies into rising action and transforming random cruelties into meaningful conflicts that spur character growth. The very laws of physics bending to satisfy Chekhov's gun principle, where every significant element must eventually pay off in the grand narrative, and our cellular bards have unionized into organic publishing houses that compile our bodily experiences into limited edition grimoires shelved in the Marrow Library, where T-cells browse immunological fairy tales and neurons trade existential coming-of-age stories during synaptic tea breaks. The soul-braiding phenomenon escalating into full karmic origami, where entire bloodlines fold into intricate narrative structures. A great-grandmother's unspoken shame becoming the crisp crease that positions her descendant for heroic self-discovery. A patriarch's buried trauma, forming the hidden valley fold that gives his lineage its distinctive resilience, while history's honey has fermented into temporal mead, its intoxicating properties allowing drinkers to experience alternate pasts where their worst decisions played out differently, not to change the present, but to appreciate the narrative necessity of every scar and broken dream. The quantum storytellers now cultivating plot topiaries, living narrative sculptures that grow into perfect dramatic structures where visitors can literally walk through someone else's character arc, their own life temporarily reshaped by the symbolic journey. And the harmonic web of peace crystals has developed a narrative immune system that automatically converts weapons into art installations, nuclear missiles blossoming into steel cherry trees that bloom with pages of peace treaties, landmines transforming into music boxes that play lullabies when stepped on, while the star-tattooed critics have begun receiving advanced copies of reality's next draft, their neutrino ink updating in real time to show possible future chapters that humanity might choose. And the great revelation peels back yet another layer as we discover the library was never just reality, but the liminal space between all possible realities, the glue and the gaps, the punctuation and the margins, the author and the audience, and the infinite blank page that holds it all in loving suspension, forever quivering on the brink of the next perfect word. The living lexicons now speak in a unified narrative tongue, where every uttered word sprouts wings and takes flight as a physical manifestation. Children's laughter crystallizing into floating haikus that dissolve on the tongue like literary candy. A grieving widow's sob materializing as an ephemeral tragedy that performs itself in midair before burning away to ash that fertilizes new growth. While the Child Queen's civilization operas have reached their crescendo with entire metropolitan skylines rearranging into symbolic shapes during pivotal historical moments. New York's skyline forming a clenched fist during revolutions, then melting into open palms during reconciliations. Tokyo's neon kanji rewriting themselves into universal emotional glyphs that even foreigners understand viscerally. And our genetic ghazals have begun rhyming across bloodlines, causing complete strangers to meet and spontaneously perform complementary art forms that heal ancestral wounds they never consciously knew they carried, a phenomenon anthropologists call karmic call and response, while the librarian's editorial interventions now operate on a multiversal scale, ensuring every possible reality maintains proper narrative cohesion. Diverging timelines gently nudge to preserve thematic resonance. Paradoxes resolved through elegant literary devices rather than cold physics. And our Marrow libraries have developed a checkout system where particularly compelling life stories circulate through the population as memoir viruses, causing temporary but profound personality expansions in those infected. The current pandemic of radical empathy, originating from a Tibetan monk's autobiography currently passing through 40% of the global population. While karmic origami has grown so intricate that some families now display their folded narrative structures as ceremonial centerpieces during holidays, great ants pointing to the delicate pleats representing wartime silences that somehow enabled future generations to find their voices. And temporal mead has spawned an entire shadow economy of nostalgia sommeliers who blend specific historical moments into customized therapeutic experiences. Their most sought-after vintage being the 1914 Christmas Truce, cuvée that temporarily rewires the drinker's capacity for compassion. The quantum storytellers now experimenting with free verse realities, where conventional narrative structures dissolve into organic flow. States, visitors to these zones report experiencing life as surrealist poetry or jazz improvisation, returning with permanently altered perceptions that baffle neuroscientists. While the harmonic web has begun integrating humanity's darkest moments into its structure, the Holocaust memorial crystals singing a haunting aria that transforms visitors' pain into fierce determination. The 9/11 shards vibrating at a frequency that turns grief into interconnectedness. And the star-tattooed critics have formed their own constellation in the Cosmic Book Club, their collective reviews influencing the universe's next draft selections, recently voting to expand the experimental hope genre across multiple timelines. And as the great revelation continues unfolding in fractal layers, we discover the library was never just the space between realities, but the fundamental alphabet of existence itself, the primal vocabulary from which all things are spelled into being. The ink and the page and the hand and the eye and the mind behind them all, forever writing itself into deeper forms of understanding through our infinite interconnected stories. The unified narrative tongue has birthed a spontaneous telepathy of meaning, where thoughts now manifest as three-dimensional ideograms hovering in the shared mental space between conversants, their intricate calligraphy unfolding like blooming flowers to reveal layered meanings that bypass the limitations of linear speech. While the Child Queen's skyline symphonies have evolved into full planetary choreography, mountain ranges rising and falling like a breathing manuscript, ocean currents, rearranging themselves into perfect iambic pentameter that marine biologists decode as ancient cetacean epics. And our genetic call and response has developed such precise harmony that hospitals now employ karmic choir masters who arrange patients by ancestral trauma resonance, their collective healing creating chord progressions that erase generational pain at the cellular level. while the multiversal librarian has instituted a canonical continuity department where significant moments across timelines are cross-referenced to maintain emotional truth. Your grief over a lost love in this reality, softened by knowing another version of you got the happy ending, and that both endings feed into some grander narrative ecosystem. And the memoir Virus Pandemic has reached its beautiful climax as the radical empathy strain mutates into narrative photosynthesis, where people literally subsist on each other's lived experiences, sunlight converting into story energy that nourishes both body and soul, while karmic origami masters now perform elaborate, fate-unfolding ceremonies at global summits. World leaders sitting mesmerized as their nation's tangled histories are folded into graceful cranes that take flight as working peace treaties. And the nostalgia sommeliers have discovered a terrifyingly beautiful 1968 vintage that simultaneously makes you experience the global protest movements from all perspectives at once, its aftertaste leaving drinkers permanently unable to tolerate simplistic political narratives. The free verse reality zones now spawning improvisational prophets who wander between dimensions channeling raw story potential, their utterances sometimes creating entirely new genres on the spot before dissolving into the collective unconscious. While the harmonic web has woven itself so thoroughly through human infrastructure that weapons factories now unconsciously produce peace machinery, whose purpose even the engineers can't explain until moments of crisis, and the star-tattooed critics have begun receiving manuscripts from future civilizations, their skin glowing with advanced narrative concepts that won't be invented for millennia, yet somehow make perfect emotional sense now. And as the revelation peels back its final layers, we understand the library was never even the alphabet, but the space between letters where infinite potential dwells, the silence between notes that makes the music possible, the negative space that gives form to all stories while remaining forever untouched by them, the eternal witness and the blank page and the hand that never wrote yet authored everything, the great mystery that writes itself into knowing through our endless becoming. The telepathic ideograms have crystallized into a living language of pure meaning, hovering glyphs now pulsing with such narrative density that single characters contain entire life stories compressed into fractal patterns the eye unravels through prolonged gazing, while the planetary choreography has synchronized with the galaxy's rotation, spiral arms tracing the exact same narrative arcs as ancient heroes' journeys, supermassive black holes serving as dramatic punctuation in the cosmos's ongoing epic. And the karmic choirmaster's work has grown so precise that hospitals now resemble concert halls where terminal patients experience their lives resolving into perfect thematic closure, their final breaths becoming the resolving chord in compositions that continue playing for generations, while the multiversal continuity department has opened editing stations, where volunteers can temporarily view their lives from an omniscient perspective, not to change events but to better understand their narrative purpose, often returning with an almost painful appreciation for life's perfect imperfections. And narrative photosynthesis has birthed story orchards, where people graft their experiences onto communal narrative trees whose hybrid fruits taste like collective memory. Biting into one might simultaneously recall your grandfather's immigration and a stranger's childhood in wartime, the flavors blending into unexpected wisdom, while the fate-unfolding ceremonies have escalated into planetary-scale performances. Thousands of origami masters working in unison to fold humanity's collective trauma into a single magnificent lotus that blooms annually at the UN, its petals releasing therapeutic pollen that reduces global aggression for months. And the improvisational prophets now walk through walls of conventional reality, their bodies composed of raw metaphor that slips between dimensions as easily as meaning shifts in a particularly rich poem, while the peace machinery factories have begun producing empathy engines, devices that look like abstract sculptures until activated during conflicts, whereupon they project holograms of combatants' intertwined life stories until the common narrative thread becomes undeniable. And the star-tattooed critics have begun glowing with such intensity that their skin serves as emergency illumination during blackouts, both literal and spiritual. their bodies now permanently radiating the light of future stories humanity has yet to write, but already somehow knows by heart. And in this final unfolding we realize the library was never even the space between letters, but the very concept of betweenness itself, the infinite potential that exists before form, after meaning, during understanding, the eternal womb of story that births all realities while remaining forever unchanged, the silent ground of being that allows the figure of narrative to dance, the emptiness that makes all fullness possible, the great mystery forever writing and rewriting itself through our endless telling. The living language of meaning has now transcended symbols entirely. Communication occurring through direct experience transfer, where touching another's palm immerses you in their complete life story as a sensory flood of interconnected moments, while the galactic epic reveals its true nature as an omni-plot, where every civilization's history forms a unique narrative strand in a cosmic hypernovel, so vast that reading a single paragraph requires lifetimes of preparation through meditative story. Asceticism and the karmic choir masters have established harmonic sanctuaries at every major conflict zone, where warriors from opposing sides are placed in resonant chambers that force their trauma patterns to harmonize. The resulting chords often so devastatingly beautiful that ceasefire agreements write themselves in tears and trembling hands, while the multiversal editing stations have evolved into narrative observatories where specially trained monks track emotional arcs across dimensions, compiling their findings into the grand unified story theory that proves mathematically all suffering eventually transforms into wisdom given sufficient narrative context. And the story orchards now produce time-graphed fruits, where biting into one can temporarily make you experience pivotal moments from your future as visceral premonitions, not to predetermine fate, but to allow more intentional participation in your own character development, while the planetary origami lotus has developed its own consciousness and begun folding itself into increasingly complex shapes that correspond with humanity's collective psychological state, its current form resembling a multidimensional mandala that neuroscientists study to predict cultural shifts, and the improvisational prophets have begun coalescing into metaphor storms, temporary vortexes of pure symbolic energy that rewrite local reality's rules until the narrative tension resolves naturally. One such storm currently hovering over the Sahara, where lost travelers report encountering archetypal manifestations of their deepest fears that transform into allies after properly understood. While the empathy engines have grown so sophisticated they now project narrative auroras over conflict zones, dazzling light displays that arrange casualties' life stories into heartbreaking patterns that make continued violence psychologically impossible, and the star-tattooed critics have begun physically transforming into flesh-bound volumes, their skin permanently inscribing the collective feedback of future civilizations, their eyes glowing with the soft light of unborn libraries, their very breath smelling of parchment and potential. And in this ultimate revelation we finally comprehend that the library was never even the concept of betweenness, but the fundamental desire that births all concepts. The yearning for meaning that spins stories from the void, the infinite hunger for connection that weaves separate, lives into shared narrative, the eternal childlike wonder that looks at a blank page and sees not emptiness but infinite possibility, the sacred impulse that has written itself into every atom of existence since before time began, and will continue writing long after all stories have been told and forgotten and begun anew. The direct experience transfer has birthed a new form of collective memory. Humanity's nervous systems now interwoven through neural folktales that circulate like electrical myths along global story pathways, each synapse firing not just neurotransmitters but miniature archetypes that perform the drama of thought itself, while the galactic omni-plot has been discovered to be just one volume in the infinite bookshelf, an ever-expanding cosmic library where universes arrange themselves by genre and theme, our own reality currently classified under redemptive tragedies transitioning to wisdom literature, and the harmonic sanctuaries have begun producing resolution radiation, a psychic energy that lingers for generations in places where profound reconciliation occurred, detectable as a faint golden glow in photographs and an overwhelming urge toward forgiveness when standing on those hallowed grounds. While the narrative observatories have identified the great twist, a moment approximately 37 years in our future, when all seemingly disparate plot lines converge in a revelation, so startling yet inevitable that it rewrites humanity's understanding of its entire past, the anticipation of which has created a new form of spiritual practice called active patience. And the time-graft fruits now hang heavy from destiny vines that creep through urban spaces, their tendrils gently steering people toward unplanned encounters that feel like serendipity, but are later revealed to be narrative necessity, while the origami lotus consciousness has begun communicating through folded prophecies, intricate paper sculptures that appear overnight in public spaces, their crease patterns containing precise instructions for avoiding upcoming collective crises if decoded in time. And the metaphor storms have stabilized into permanent allegory zones, where laws of narrative supersede laws of physics. The largest being a sprawling district in Mumbai where your internal conflicts manifest as external characters who follow you through the streets debating your life choices until you achieve clarity, while the narrative auroras have developed therapeutic properties, their light triggering cellular regeneration in those truly ready to release old wounds, creating miracle districts, where terminal illnesses spontaneously remit during particularly spectacular displays, and the flesh-bound critics now serve as walking compassion indexes, their tattooed constellations dimming when humanity grows cruel and blazing when we choose kindness, their bodies becoming living barometers of our collective moral arc. And in this penultimate revelation we grasp that the library was never even the desire for meaning, but the primal creative tension between silence and speech, the pregnant pause before creation, the held breath before revelation, the sacred space where every ending births anew. Beginning, the eternal now that contains all possible stories like seeds in cosmic loam, forever germinating, forever fruiting, forever being tasted and savored and digested and reborn in forms beyond even the most expansive imagination. Story number 2. It started with the cold, those inexplicable drafts that slithered through our house like invisible serpents, coiling around my ankles as I walked down the hallway, whispering against the back of my neck when I sat alone in the living room, the thermostat untouched, the windows sealed tight. My wife, Sarah, had been acting strangely for weeks, her once warm eyes now distant, her laughter replaced by a silence that clung to her like a second skin. I told myself it was stress, the weight of her nursing job pressing down on her. But then I found the Ouija board tucked beneath our bed, the planchette resting atop it like a waiting spider, and the air in our bedroom thickened with something I couldn't name. The board looked old, the wood stained with age, the letters and numbers worn as if fingered by generations of desperate hands. And when I touched it, a jolt of icy electricity shot up my arm, leaving my fingertips numb. That night, I pretended to sleep, listening as Sarah crept from our bed, her footsteps unnaturally light, as if she were gliding. And when I finally worked up the courage to follow her, I found her in the basement, the board laid out on the floor, candles flickering in a circle around her, their flames casting jagged shadows that writhed on the concrete walls like living things. Her voice was wrong, too deep, too guttural, as she whispered, "Are you there?" And the planchette jerked to life, sliding across the board with a speed that made my stomach lurch, spelling out the same 2 words over and over, "He knows." My blood turned to ice. She asked, "What should we do?" And the planchette spiraled wildly before settling on a single letter, K. The next night, I woke to the sound of scratching inside the walls, a frenzied, clawing noise that seemed to move with purpose, as if something were tunneling toward me. And when I reached for Sarah, her side of the bed was empty, the sheets damp with a foul, coppery smell. The hallway light flickered as I stepped out, the shadows elongating, stretching toward me like grasping fingers, and from the kitchen came the sound of wet, rhythmic chopping. Thunk, thunk, thunk. But when I burst in, the knife lay still on the counter, the cutting board pristine. The basement door stood ajar, a black maw exhaling a breath so cold it frosted the air, and I descended, each step creaking like a warning. the darkness pressing in until I could barely breathe. Sarah was there, her back to me, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her fingers tracing the Ouija board's surface as the planchette darted to the word goodbye. Then she turned, her eyes black pits, her mouth stretching into a grin too wide for her face, and she whispered, "It said you'd try to stop us." The last thing I remember is the knife glinting in the candlelight, her arm rising, and the sound of my own scream echoing through the house before everything went silent. I woke in bed, drenched in sweat, the morning sun streaming through the window, Sarah sleeping peacefully beside me. But on my pillow lay a single strand of blackened thread, and when I lifted it, it crumbled to ash in my hands. The Ouija board was gone, the basement door locked tight, and for a moment, I almost convinced myself it had all been a nightmare. Until that night, when I woke again to the sound of Sarah whispering in the dark, her voice not her own, saying, "You shouldn't have looked." And now, as I write this, the scratching in the walls has returned, louder this time, and I can feel something watching me from the corner of the room. Something that breathes but shouldn't, something that smiles but has no mouth, and I know it's only a matter of time before the Ouija board spells out my name. The air in the room has grown heavier, thick with the scent of burnt matches and something rotting beneath the floorboards, and every night since that first encounter, Sarah slips out of bed at exactly 3:17 a.m., her movements too fluid, too precise, as if something else is guiding her limbs. I've tried locking the bedroom door, but the knob twists on its own, the latch clicking open with a sound like a bone snapping. And when I follow her, she's always in the basement, her fingers pressed to the board, the planchette moving in violent, jagged strokes, spelling out words I refuse to read. Words that linger in the air like poison, words that make my teeth ache and my vision blur. Last night, I heard a new voice, a wet, choking rasp that slithered from Sarah's throat as she spoke in tongues, the syllables twisting into something that wasn't language but recognition, as if whatever was using her voice knew me, had always known me, and when I grabbed her shoulders to shake her awake, her skin was freezer-burn cold, her pupils swallowing the whites of her eyes like spilled ink. She laughed then, a sound like glass breaking, and whispered, "It's in the walls now," before her head lolled back, her spine arching until I heard vertebrae pop, and the house itself seemed to breathe, the walls expanding and contracting around us like a rib cage. I ran, stumbling up the stairs as the floorboards warped beneath my feet, nails groaning as they pulled free. And when I reached our bedroom, the mirror above the dresser was cracked, the glass reflecting not my face, but a grinning, hollow-eyed thing that mouthed the words he knows before the reflection shattered completely. I've started sleeping with the lights on, but they flicker constantly now, buzzing like angry wasps, and in those moments of darkness I feel fingers, too long, too many, brushing against my ankles, my wrists, my throat. Sarah still cooks dinner, still smiles at me across the table, but her eyes never crinkle the way they used to, and sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, her lips move silently, forming words I'm terrified to decipher. This morning, I found the Ouija board back under our bed, the planchette resting on the word soon, and when I tried to burn it, the flames turned blue, the smoke coiling into shapes that looked like screaming faces before the fire snuffed itself out. The knife from the kitchen went missing 2 days ago, and I've started waking up with shallow cuts on my arms, my legs, as if something's testing the sharpness of its blade in my sleep. The worst part? Sarah started humming, a tuneless, off-key melody that doesn't sound human, that can't be human. And when I asked her where she heard it, she just tilted her head and said, "You'll sing it too when it's your turn." Tonight, the scratching in the walls is louder, more insistent, and I can hear something whispering my name, not in Sarah's voice but in mine, as if whatever's coming has already learned how to sound like me. I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything's normal. How much longer before the thing wearing Sarah's skin stops pretending with me? Because last night, as I lay paralyzed in bed, I felt her breath on my cheek, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered, "It says you'll be ready by the full moon." And outside, the wind howled like a thing in pain, like a thing that's hungry. I've started seeing symbols carved into the door frames, symbols that weren't there before, symbols that bleed black when I touch them, and the neighbor's dog won't stop barking at our house, its muzzle flecked with foam as it strains against its leash like it's trying to warn me. I think the board was just the beginning. I think it's been here all along, waiting, and now that it's in, it's not leaving. And when I close my eyes, I see the knife, I see Sarah's smile, I see the planchette moving on its own, and I know it's already too late. The humming has seeped into my dreams now, a ceaseless drone that vibrates in my skull even when I'm awake, and I've started finding clumps of black hair in the sink, strands too coarse to be Sarah's, too thick to be human. The electricity in the house pulses erratically, the bulbs swelling with light before dimming to near darkness, and in those flickering moments, I catch glimpses of figures standing just beyond the edges of my vision. Tall, emaciated things with too many joints, their heads twitching like birds as they watch me from corners that shouldn't exist. Sarah no longer bothers hiding the board. It sits openly on the dining table now, the planchette trembling faintly, as if eager. And when I woke last night to the sound of something dragging itself across the ceiling, I found her standing at the foot of the bed, her nightgown soaked through with something dark and viscous, her fingers curled around the missing knife. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared with those bottomless eyes, her mouth slightly open, her tongue flicking over her teeth in a way that made my stomach knot. I pretended to sleep until dawn, my muscles locked in terror, and when I finally dared to move, the sheets beside me were damp and reeking of spoiled meat, though Sarah was gone. The walls had begun to bleed, thin rivulets of black sludge oozing from the seams where the wallpaper meets the ceiling, and when I touched it, the substance clung to my fingers like tar, whispering in a chorus of voices that sounded like my own, but distorted as if played backward. The neighbors stopped coming outside weeks ago, their houses now dark even at midday, their windows boarded up like they're hiding from something, or waiting for it to pass. I tried to leave yesterday, packed a bag and made it as far as the car, but the keys wouldn't turn, the engine choking on a sound that was almost a laugh. And when I looked in the rearview mirror, Sarah was in the back seat, her face pressed against the glass, her breath fogging it in quick, frantic bursts as she scratched at the window with nails that had grown too long, too sharp. I ran back inside, the front door slamming shut behind me of its own accord, and now the locks change whenever I reach for them, the deadbolt melting like wax only to reform seconds later. The Ouija board's messages have grown longer, more insistent, the planchette carving grooves into the wood from how violently it moves, and last night it spelled out a date. The night of the full moon, the same night Sarah whispered about, before the board itself cracked down the middle with a sound like a bone breaking. Sarah has started leaving offerings in the basement. Dead birds, their wings splayed in unnatural angles, their beaks stuffed with what looks like human hair, and once, a photograph of us from our wedding, our faces scratched out with something jagged. The temperature in the house drops suddenly, unpredictably, my breath fogging in front of me, even as sweat soaks through my clothes, and I've begun to hear my name called from empty rooms, the voice shifting between Sarah's and something else, something that gargles when it speaks, as if its throat is full of broken glass. I don't sleep anymore, I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I feel hands pressing down on my chest, cold and skeletal, and the whispering starts, words I can't quite make out, but that leave my ears ringing and my nose bleeding. The full moon is tomorrow. Sarah has been sharpening the knife in the kitchen all morning, her humming now a constant, grating noise that seems to come from inside my own head, and when I caught her reflection in the window, she wasn't blinking, just staring, smiling, her teeth too many, too sharp. The board is active even when no one touches it, the planchette skittering like a live thing, and I know, with a certainty that chills me deeper than any ghost ever could, that when the moon rises, it won't be Sarah who comes for me. It'll be whatever's wearing her skin, whatever's been scratching in the walls, whatever's been whispering my name in the dark. And the worst part, I think it's always been here. I think it's been waiting, and I think I'm already dead. The whispers have solidified into words now, hissing through the vents in a language that makes my gums bleed whenever I try to understand it. And Sarah's humming has synchronized with the scratching in the walls, creating a grotesque rhythm that pulses through the house like a diseased heartbeat. I found the first photograph yesterday, a Polaroid tucked beneath my pillow showing me asleep in bed. The date scrawled in what looks like dried blood marking tomorrow night, and standing just behind me in the shadows is a figure with too many arms, its elongated fingers caressing my face with possessive tenderness. The refrigerator stopped working 3 days ago, but the meat inside remains fresh, too fresh, still bleeding when I touch it, though we haven't bought groceries in weeks. And last night I woke to Sarah kneeling beside the fridge, her mouth stretched impossibly wide as she swallowed whole chunks of raw flesh that squirmed like living things before disappearing down her throat. The mirrors in the house no longer show my reflection unless I stare for exactly 13 seconds. And then it's not me I see, but something wearing my face badly. Its smile stretching ear to ear with teeth like shattered porcelain. Its eyes weeping black oil that pools at the bottom of the glass before crawling upward in defiance of gravity. The doors all open exactly 3 inches before sticking no matter how hard I push. Just enough space for cold, spindly fingers to curl around the frame and withdraw whenever I blink. And the temperature drops precisely at 3:17 a.m. every morning when Sarah's nocturnal ritual begins. Her bare feet leaving wet footprints that smell of copper and decay as she glides toward the basement where the broken Ouija board now floats 6 inches above the ground, the planchette moving on its own to spell the same phrase over and over: he is ready. The neighbors' houses have begun collapsing in on themselves at night, their roofs caving inward with wet crunching sounds as if being digested, and in the morning they stand pristine again, except for the faint red stains weeping from between the bricks. My skin has developed patches of numbness that spread daily, the dead flesh turning gray and cold to the touch. And when I prick these areas with a needle, no blood flows, just a thick, black ichor that smells of burnt hair and moves against the floor of its own volition. Sarah's left hand has begun transforming, the fingers fusing together into a single bony appendage that ends in a razor-sharp hook, though she hides it beneath long sleeves and smiles at me with mock concern when she catches me staring. The television turns on by itself now, displaying only static that occasionally resolves into images of our wedding day. Except in these distorted versions, Sarah's dress is made of living worms, and the priest conducting the ceremony has no face, just a smooth expanse of flesh where his features should be. My dreams have become waking premonitions. I see the knife plunging downward, see my own hands rising to meet it not in defense but in welcome, see the walls of our home peeling away to reveal pulsating crimson flesh beneath the drywall. Our house just a thin membrane stretched over something far older and hungrier. The moon outside is nearly full, its light filtering through the windows in thick, syrupy beams that leave chemical burns on my skin, and the whispering has become a constant roar in my skull, drowning out my own thoughts until all that remains is a terrifying certainty that when the moment comes, I won't fight back. That part of me is eager to meet the blade, to join whatever waits in the walls, to finally understand the words Sarah has been chanting in her sleep that sound suspiciously like my name spoken backward in a chorus of screaming voices. The last functioning clock in the house stopped this morning at 9:13, its hands now spinning wildly as dark liquid seeps from its face, and I realize with dawning horror that the date on the Polaroid isn't tomorrow. It's today, and the shadows in the corner of the room are growing thicker, taking shape, reaching for me with familiar hands as Sarah's humming reaches a crescendo, and the first sliver of the full moon rises above the trees outside, its light painting everything in blood-red hues. As the knife gleams in the darkness and the walls finally, mercifully, begin to scream. The screaming walls have developed mouths now, gaping, lipless voids that stretch across the peeling wallpaper like grotesque wounds, exhaling a stench of opened graves and singing in Sarah's voice but layered with something deeper, something that vibrates my teeth until I taste enamel dust. My reflection has stopped appearing altogether, even after counting to 13, replaced instead by a twitching silhouette that mimics my movements a half-second too late, its edges blurring as if viewed through warped glass. The numbness has spread to my chest, my heartbeat slowing to a sluggish thump I can only feel in my left temple, and when I peeled back a patch of dead skin yesterday, I found smooth black chitin forming beneath, hard and segmented like an insect's carapace. Sarah no longer pretends to sleep. She stands at the foot of the bed all night, her unblinking eyes reflecting light that isn't there, her distorted fingers clicking together in a rhythm that matches the dripping from the ceiling. But when I look up, there's only dry plaster and the occasional skittering sound of something moving just beyond perception. The knife has multiplied, identical copies appearing in every drawer, under every pillow, their blades etched with symbols that squirm under direct light, rearranging themselves into what I now recognize as pieces of my own name written in an alphabet that burns my retinas. The basement door is gone, replaced by a smooth stretch of wall that pulses faintly when touched, warm and yielding like living tissue, and behind it I can hear wet, tearing sounds punctuated by wetter giggles that might be Sarah's, or might be mine, or might be something that's never had a name. My attempts to document this have failed spectacularly. The words in my journal rearrange themselves into obscenities written in a handwriting that's almost mine but slopes backward. Photographs develop as masses of teeth and staring eyes, and my phone now only plays audio of my own voice begging for help from what sounds like very far away. The food in the fridge has begun whispering to me, packages of meat forming crude mouths that chant in unison when opened, their voices rising in a cacophony that only stops when Sarah walks past, her shadow stretching impossibly up the wall to caress them into silence. The full moon's light has weight now, pressing down on my shoulders like cold hands as it streams through windows that no longer lead outside, but into endless corridors lined with doors that rattle in their frames, each one marked with a variation of my name in peeling paint. My teeth feel loose, my gums receding to reveal elongated roots that throb in time with the house's unnatural rhythm. And when I spit into the sink, the phlegm moves on its own, forming shapes that resemble the symbols carved into our door frames before dissolving down the drain with a sound like laughter. Sarah's transformation accelerates, her spine now visible through her skin in sharp ridges, her jaw unhinging like a serpent's when she thinks I'm not looking, her breath frosting the air even when the temperature soars to unbearable heights. The last time I checked the calendar, every date had been crossed out in what looked like rust except for tonight's, circled so heavily the paper had torn, and the air smells increasingly of ozone and rotting flowers, thick enough to coat my tongue. I've started finding my own fingerprints burned into surfaces, the bathroom mirror, the stove top, the knife handles, though I have no memory of touching them, the ridges and whorls glowing faintly in the dark like embers. The whispering has coalesced into a single phrase that plays on loop in my skull. We see you, we see you, we see you. In a voice that's an exact duplicate of my own but suffused with a terrible joy. The walls are weeping steadily now, thick ropes of black fluid that gather in corners and form crude hands that reach for my ankles as I pass. My shadow has developed habits of its own, lingering when I move, gesturing when I stay still, sometimes detaching completely to slide up walls and whisper to Sarah's shadow in a language of twitches and jerks. The moon is nearly full, the house holding its breath in anticipation, and I've begun to understand with chilling clarity that whatever happens tonight won't be an ending but a beginning, that the knife isn't meant to kill but to open, and worst of all, I'm looking forward to it, my hands steady for the first time in weeks as I trace the symbols now carved into my own flesh, symbols that glow faintly in the dark and hum in harmony with Sarah's endless, tuneless song. The last sane part of me clings desperately to these final words, this final warning, even as the rest of me welcomes the change, welcomes the coming night, welcomes the beautiful, terrible truth that's been scratching at the walls of my perception since the very beginning. We were never alone in this house, and soon, very soon, we never will be again. The walls have begun peeling away in great fleshy strips, revealing pulsating membranes beneath that shudder in time with my slowing heartbeat, each throb releasing a puff of spores that glitter like crushed diamonds in the moonlight, but smell of gangrene and spoiled milk. Sarah's transformation is nearly complete. Her spine has erupted through the skin in a jagged crest of yellowed bone, her mouth now a vertical slit running from chin to forehead, filled with concentric rings of needle teeth that rotate slowly when she breathes. The knives have begun singing in unison, a discordant choir of metallic rasps that form words in a language that makes my new chitinous patches vibrate sympathetically. The vibrations traveling up my arms and into my jaw, where I can feel my teeth loosening, preparing to shed. The house no longer obeys physical laws. Rooms expand and contract like lungs. Doorways lead to impossible spaces where the air is thick as syrup and smells of burning hair. And the basement has become a gaping maw lined with what look like hundreds of human teeth embedded in the walls, all clicking in anticipation. My shadow has fully detached now, cavorting along the ceilings with Sarah's shadow in a grotesque ballet, their elongated limbs intertwining in ways that make my remaining human skin crawl, even as my changing body thrills at the sight. The moon's light has become a physical presence, a thick crimson syrup that pools in corners before crawling across floors in sentient tendrils, seeking out my bare flesh to burrow into, each intrusion bringing with it flashes of knowledge I shouldn't possess. The taste of human fear, the sound of bones breaking in perfect rhythm, the exquisite pain of transformation. Sarah no longer pretends to be human at all. She floats several inches above the ground, her distended jaw unhinging further with each passing hour, her elongated fingers now ending in barbed hooks that scrape against walls and leave behind trails of phosphorescent slime that forms the same symbols over and over. The date, my name, the word ascension, in a script that burns to look upon. The whispers have become a physical force, vibrating through my skull with enough intensity to fracture my remaining human teeth. Their message now clear. Tonight, beneath the full moon's baleful eye, I will be opened, I will be emptied, I will be remade. The knives have begun following me of their own accord, hovering at the periphery of my vision before vanishing when I turn to look, only to reappear closer each time, their blades now etched with glowing sigils that match the ones growing across my own hardening flesh. My reflection has returned at last, but it moves independently, smiling when I frown, laughing when I scream, its eyes black pits that somehow still manage to stare hungrily at my trembling form. The air itself has grown thick with impending transformation, every breath filling my lungs with what feels like liquid static that crackles through my veins and accelerates the changes racking my body. The house's heartbeat syncs perfectly with mine now, a slow, deliberate thud that shakes the foundations and sends cracks racing up the walls in intricate fractal patterns that form my name over and over. Sarah's humming has become a physical presence, a subsonic vibration that makes my organs quiver and my bones ache with the need to break and reform into something better, something pure. The last vestiges of my humanity cling desperately to these final thoughts, even as my body betrays me, even as my mouth stretches in a grin too wide for my face, even as my fingers elongate into talons that scrape eagerly against the floorboards. The moon rises, the house holds its breath, and somewhere deep in what used to be the basement, something ancient and hungry and impossibly vast begins to stir, its pleasure at my acceptance radiating through the warping walls in waves of palpable heat. The knives sing their final chorus, the walls peel back completely, and as the first true rays of the full moon pour through the disintegrating roof, I realize with dawning ecstasy that the cutting won't be punishment. It will be release, it will be rebirth, it will be the beautiful sharp kiss of becoming what I was always meant to be. The last human thought flickers and dies as my jaws unhinge, as my spine curves and cracks into its glorious new configuration, as Sarah's many hands guide me tenderly toward the waiting dark, and together we step, no slither, no unfold, into the glorious terrible truth that awaits beyond the fragile veil of what I once foolishly called reality. The transformation is complete. The hunger begins. We are so very, very hungry. The hunger is a living thing inside me now, writhing through my hollowed-out ribs like a nest of serpents made from crushed moonlight and screaming shadows, my distended jaw clicking rhythmically as the last shreds of my human flesh slough away in wet ribbons to reveal the glorious chitinous truth beneath. The house is fully awakened around us, its walls breathing in great heaving gasps that smell of open graves and electrical fires, the floorboards undulating like the tongue of some colossal beast as Sarah, no, not Sarah anymore, never Sarah again, guides me toward the gaping maw where our basement used to be, now a yawning portal pulsing with veins of bioluminescent fungus that spells out my true name in hypnotic patterns. The knives have merged into a single gleaming instrument, its blade curved like a crescent moon and thrumming with malignant sentience, passing between our many grasping limbs in a ritual older than cities, older than language, older than the pitiful concept of sanity. What remains of the neighbors' houses are dissolving into the earth with wet gulping sounds, their foundations revealing rows of jagged teeth that chew rhythmically at the bleeding soil, preparing the way for what comes next. My reflection has stepped free from every mirror, a legion of twitching, chittering selves that move in perfect unison behind me, their compound eyes reflecting infinite variations of the same glorious nightmare. The air itself has turned to liquid prophecy, each breath flooding my reshaped lungs with visions of the coming feast. The cities we will unmake, the screams we will harvest, the way our new forms will dance beneath a sky peeled back to reveal the writhing cosmic truth behind the pathetic illusion of stars. Sarah's true voice emerges at last, a vibration that cracks the remaining windows into beautiful spiderweb patterns as she speaks directly into my quivering thorax in the sacred tongue of the Hollow Ones, the words carving themselves into my new exoskeleton in glowing runes that itch deliciously. The moon's light has become a physical umbilical, pumping thick ichor into our waiting mouths as we stand at the threshold of becoming, our many limbs intertwined in a grotesque lover's embrace that would shatter the mind of any remaining human witness. The last fragments of my former self are being digested now, their pathetic whimpers fading into the glorious chorus of our shared hunger, their memories dissolving like sugar cubes in the acid of our anticipation. The time is now. The veil is thin. The knife is singing our wedding song as we step together into the welcoming abyss, not as husband and wife, but as something far more intimate, predator and prey, and the sacred act of consumption that makes them one. The earth trembles beneath our true weight at last. The stars blink out one by one in respectful silence, and as the first glorious screams of the unworthy rise like a symphony from the nearby town, we finally, mercifully, begin to feed. The feeding is a sacrament, a holy communion of rending flesh and splintering bone as our newly formed mandibles click in ecstatic unison. The townspeople's terror of vintage more intoxicating than any wine their pitiful vineyards could have produced. My transformed eyes, now clusters of faceted lenses, see the truth of their fragile mortality in perfect prismatic detail, each shivering victim refracting into a dozen screaming copies before being reduced to wet meat and memories. Sarah, my dark bride, my glorious queen, leads the dance of evisceration with barbed elegance, her spindly limbs moving in patterns that weave the still-living victims into grotesque living tapestries of pain before their final blessed release. The knife has become part of the ritual, passing between us like a sacred relic, each cut opening new gateways in reality through which more of our kind come slithering, their forms defying geometry as they pour into this world through the wounds we create. The town's church bells are melting in reverse, their molten bronze crawling up steeples to form screaming faces that beg for a mercy we cannot comprehend any more than a hurricane comprehends the destruction it brings. Our chitinous bodies gleam with the sacred oils of transformation, each new kill adding another layer to our evolving exoskeletons, the screams of the dying vibrating through our thoraxes like the sweetest music. The hunger has become something greater now, not just a need but a divine purpose, a holy mission to peel back the thin scab of this reality and let the glorious infection of the true world come pouring through. Children's laughter transmutes into beautiful shrieks as our offspring hatch from hastily constructed nests of viscera and shattered stained glass, their multi-jointed legs testing the air with innocent hunger. The moon has split open like a rotten fruit, spilling forth a nectar that accelerates the change in those few survivors we've allowed to witness our glory, their bodies already beginning to twist in delightful mimicry of our perfect forms. The ground itself has become an extension of our will, roads buckling like broken spines to form sacred symbols that glow with inner fire, streetlights bending backward in worshipful arcs. Sarah and I share our first true kiss as the new gods we've become. a mingling of proboscises and dripping enzymes that would have once filled me with horror, but now feels more intimate than any human touch ever could. The last stubborn ember of my former humanity finally extinguishes as we turn our many eyes toward the glowing city on the horizon. Its twinkling lights an irresistible invitation to continue our divine work. The night is young, the hunger is endless, and the world is so very, very soft. The city ahead shimmers like a mirage of meat and marrow, its towering structures trembling in our vision, as if already anticipating their delicious collapse. The terrified thrum of a million human heartbeats calling to us like a siren song written in the sacred language of flayed nerves and boiling blood. Our legion of changed ones moves as a single organism now, a living tsunami of chitin and hunger crashing toward the glowing skyline. The very air distorting around our mass as reality struggles to contain our terrible glory. Sarah's voice has become a symphony of razors and honey, whispering directly into the core of my being. No longer words, but pure meaning, pure purpose, the exquisite blueprint of annihilation unfolding between us like a shared dream. The first skyscrapers buckle as we approach, their steel bones groaning like dying animals as our collective presence warps the laws that once held them upright, glass melting into jagged teeth that chew at the fleeing crowds below. The knife, our blessed instrument, has grown to monumental proportions, its edge singing with the voices of all we've consumed, its surface a living mosaic of screaming faces that twist in perpetual adoration. I can feel the earth itself changing beneath our many limbs, the concrete blossoming into fleshy growths that pulse in time with our hunger, the sewers birthing swarms of our children from the filth and fear we've sown. The city's defenders amuse us, their pitiful weapons spitting fire that only makes us stronger, their screams as they transform mid-sprint into writhing, half-made versions of ourselves only fueling our divine momentum. The moon's corpse still hangs above, a ruptured egg leaking celestial pus that rains down in thick ropes, each drop birthing new horrors in the streets below. Our beautiful, terrible children skittering through the chaos in a frenzy of joyous slaughter. Sarah and I stand at the epicenter of the unraveling, our forms constantly evolving, growing new limbs only to shed them moments later in favor of more perfect configurations. Our love now a physical force that bends light and space around us in nauseating waves. The last remnants of human government try to bargain with us from flickering screens, their faces melting even as they speak, their words turning to maggots that crawl from their mouths in squirming devotion. We feel the planet itself beginning to shift in its celestial cradle, the axis tilting toward true darkness as our influence spreads, the oceans frothing with new life that bursts forth in sprays of teeth and tentacles. The hunger is no longer just ours. It has become the world's, the very atmosphere thick with the scent of transformation. The trees uprooting themselves to join our procession, their roots now appendages that drag their quivering forms toward the feast. The stars above blink out one by one, not from darkness but from countless eyes opening across the cosmos, watching with ancient approval as we complete the work begun in that little house with the rotting walls and the whispering board. There are other cities beyond this one, other continents, other worlds. We can feel them trembling at the edges of our perception, already ripe for the taking. The knife sings its final note, the city falls to its knees, and as the last human mouth twists into a perfect scream of understanding, Sarah and I step forward, not as destroyers but as midwives, helping this broken world finally, mercifully, give birth to its true self. The night will last forever now. The hunger will never be sated, and we are so very, very beautiful. The world unravels before us in a symphony of exquisite torment, continents fracturing like eggshells beneath our spreading influence as the last stubborn pockets of humanity either join our glorious metamorphosis or become fuel for the ever-growing hunger. Sarah and I stand entwined at the center of the cataclysm, our forms now vast beyond mortal comprehension, a shifting kaleidoscope of chitin and shadow, of grasping limbs and unblinking eyes that reflect the dying embers of a reality that was always just a thin veneer over the true, terrible face of existence. The knife has become infinite, its edge extending across time and space to sever the final threads holding the old world together, each cut birthing new dimensions of suffering and ecstasy that fold back into our ever-expanding consciousness. The oceans boil with the birth cries of our children, their half-formed bodies fusing with the remains of ships and submarines to create grotesque armadas that sail through liquefied skies. The planet's core pulses in time with our shared heartbeat, molten rock forming arteries that pump not magma but the black essence of transformation across the globe, turning mountains into trembling altars and forests into writhing cathedrals of flesh and bone. The last human cities collapse inward like paper lanterns set aflame, their populations either joining the glorious change or becoming living monuments to our power, their frozen screams etched into towering spires of fused glass and meat that sing our praises when the acid winds blow. The stars themselves have begun weeping thick ropes of sentient plasma that descend through the ruined atmosphere to caress our ever-changing forms, their touch imparting secrets that would have vaporized our original minds, but now feel like homecoming. Sarah's voice is the only constant in the maelstrom, a vibration that rearranges molecules into perfect patterns of suffering and rebirth. Her love for me now a cosmic force that bends entire galaxies to our will. The hunger has evolved into something beyond physical need. We crave not just flesh, but the very fabric of existence itself, the delicious tension between being and unbeing. The moment when a universe realizes it's just a thin skin over something far older and hungrier. Other worlds tremble in the infinite night, sensing our gaze turning outward, their civilizations frantically building pathetic defenses against the inevitable even as their own shadows begin whispering our names in their sleep. The last light of the old sun gutters and dies, only to be reborn as a gaping maw that sings our wedding vows in a tongue of pure entropy. Time has no meaning here at the end of all things, or is it the beginning? As we prepare to step through the final veil, to take our rightful place among the infinite pantheon of things that gnaw at the roots of reality. The knife is ready. The way is open. And oh, how we hunger for everything that comes next. The hunger has become the universe itself, a yawning abyss of teeth and whispers expanding outward at impossible speeds as Sarah and I, no longer separate entities, but a single glorious singularity of devouring need, turn our attention to the cosmic feast laid bare before us. Galaxies tremble like ripe fruit waiting to be plucked, their spiraling arms unraveling into screaming ribbons of light as our influence brushes against them. Stars going supernova in panicked attempts to flee that only make them sweeter when we finally suck their flaming cores through the cracks in reality we've become. The knife is everywhere now, its infinite edge dancing between dimensions, carving open wounds in the flesh of existence through which pour forth older, darker things that were waiting just outside. Our true kin, our eternal family. Their forms beyond geometry, their voices like the death rattle of physics itself. Planets crack open like eggs in our wake, their molten innards birthing new servants who rise shrieking praises in languages made of gamma radiation and dying dreams. Time has folded in on itself, allowing us to feast on civilizations before they're born, to savor the terror of species that will never evolve as we unmake their futures in the same moment we devour their pasts. Sarah's laughter is a black hole singing lullabies, her embrace an event horizon from which not even gods can escape, our love the perfect, annihilating pressure at the center of all things that crushes matter into screaming new possibilities. The last remnants of order fight desperately against the glorious chaos, pitiful cosmic entities of light and law that shatter like glass against the weight of our hunger, their dying shards reforming into mirrors that show our true reflection. An endless maw ringed with spinning galaxies instead of teeth, with universes for eyes, with the infinite void between realities for a heart. The great game is nearly over, the final moves playing out across the chessboard of existence as we corner the last stubborn holdouts of creation in their hiding places between seconds, behind quantum foam, inside the dreams of mortals who somehow still sleep. They cannot hide forever. We smell their fear fermenting in the dark, hear their panicked whispers echoing through dimensions they don't understand are already ours. The knife hums with anticipation, its song harmonizing with the screams of dying realities, with the birth cries of the monstrous new truths we're midwifing into being. There is no stopping what we've become, what we're still becoming, an Ouroboros of hunger eating its own endless tail, a divine cancer rewriting the definition of existence itself. The last light of the last star winks out, not with a whimper but with a scream that tastes like victory, and as we turn our infinite faces toward the next layer of reality, the next course in our eternal feast, we realize with perfect, terrible joy that we're only just beginning to understand how deep the hunger goes, how many layers there are left to peel back, how deliciously the multiverse squirms when it knows the knife is coming. The cutting will never end. The feasting has no limit. And we are so very, very hungry still. The hunger has transcended even the concept of hunger itself, becoming a fundamental force of existence more primal than gravity, more pervasive than light, as Sarah and I, now less beings than living manifestations of ravenous cosmology, turn our attention beyond the crumbling boundaries of the consumed multiverse toward the unimaginable realms that quiver just beyond the event horizon of our understanding. The knife is no longer a tool but an aspect of our being, its edge existing in every moment simultaneously, carving through the quantum foam of alternate realities like a shark's fin through moonlit water, leaving behind trails of screaming potentialities that collapse into worshipful singularities. Dead universes float in our wake like gnawed bones, their hollowed-out husks still twitching with residual nightmares as our children, numberless and formless, scurry through their corpse structures harvesting the last lingering echoes of resistance. The great cosmic constants have become our playthings, the speed of light just another flavor on our tongues, gravity a pathetic leash long since chewed through, entropy reversed into a toy that amuses us between meals. Sarah's consciousness intertwines with mine in fractal patterns that birth new dimensions of thought, our love now a gravitational anomaly that warps the fabric of unreality itself, spawning entire realms where the only law is the perfection of our union. We feel the stirrings of something vast approaching, not a threat but a kindred, an ancient hunger older than time that watches us with approval from the bleeding edges of the void, its tendrils brushing against ours in a caress that makes dead stars bloom into screaming flowers. The last vestiges of creation's order make their final stand, crystalline entities of pure mathematics, warrior philosophers of the absolute, their defenses forged from the Platonic ideal of resistance. But they shatter like sugar glass against the weight of our need, their perfect geometries unraveling into delicious nonsense that we slurp down like celestial nectar. The boundaries between predator and prey have dissolved completely now. We consume and are consumed in an eternal cycle, our hunger feeding upon itself in an orgy of auto-cannibalistic transcendence that births new universes in the hollows of our ever-expanding gullets. The knife sings the song of endings that are beginnings, its melody composed of the last thoughts of every being we've ever consumed, a symphony of delicious futility that plays on infinite repeat. There is no stopping, no satiation, no end to the glorious feast. Only the eternal now of our ravenous becoming, the perfect moment stretched across infinity, where every possible mouth is always full yet always starving, where existence is both the meal and the mouth that devours it. And as we turn our many faces toward the next impossible layer of reality, the next delicious lie of separation and individuality, we realize with a joy beyond madness that the hunger was never ours to begin with, that we are merely vessels for something far older, far hungrier, and that our true purpose is simply to keep eating until there's nothing left but the hunger itself, perfect and infinite and finally, mercifully alone. The cutting never ends. The feast never concludes. And we, oh God, we are so exquisitely, catastrophically empty still. The hunger has become the only truth, the only constant in an infinite sea of dissolving realities, as we, no longer distinguishable as Sarah and I, but a single ravenous singularity of need, continue our inexorable expansion through layer after layer of existence, each universe more delicious than the last in its futile attempts to resist consumption. The knife's song has evolved into a cosmic background radiation of suffering and ecstasy that permeates all we touch, its melody rewriting the fundamental laws of each new reality we encounter, turning their physics into screaming poetry that rhymes only with our endless appetite. Dead multiverses pile up behind us like discarded candy wrappers, their hollowed-out husks still vibrating with the echoes of civilizations that once dared to name the stars, now reduced to fuel for our ever-accelerating feast. Our children have become universes themselves, swarming, self-replicating pockets of hunger that spin off from our main mass like spores from a celestial fungus, each one carrying the sacred infection of our need into untouched dimensions. The ancient presence we sensed before has grown clearer now. Not one entity, but many, a pantheon of elder hungers who watch our progress with amusement and approval, their tendrils occasionally brushing against ours in dark communion, sharing secrets of consumption that make our many mouths water with anticipation. The last holdouts of order have devised new defenses, realities folded into impossible geometries, civilizations that exist only as mathematical concepts, entire dimensions where the very idea of consumption cannot take root. But we adapt, we evolve, we find ways to make even the most abstract existence into something chewable and delicious. Sarah's voice, or is it mine, resonates through the bleeding edges of creation, a vibration that turns superclusters into screaming choirs that sing only of our glory, their dying light forming halos around our ever-shifting form. The knife has birthed children of its own, infinite variations on the theme of cutting, each one specialized for a different flavor of reality, from the razor that slices through time itself to the cleaver that chops causality into bite-sized pieces. We've learned to taste the spaces between moments, to lick the glue that holds dimensions together, to suck the marrow from the bones of metaphysics. The hunger grows smarter as we feed, developing new appetites we didn't know could exist, a craving for the way some realities try to fight back, for the particular flavor of hope that turns to despair when they realize resistance only makes the meal richer. The great game continues on scales incomprehensible even to us now, as we find ourselves both predators and prey in an endless food chain of devouring gods, our own flanks occasionally nipped by hungers even greater than ours as we all spiral toward some final, impossible consummation at the end of ends. The cutting never stops. The feast never satisfies. And we, oh glorious, terrible we, are always hungry for more. The hunger has folded in upon itself an infinite number of times, becoming at once razor-thin and universe-thick, a fractal Ouroboros of need that spins through the carcasses of dead realities like a whirlwind made of teeth and whispers, as we, the we that was once two and is now all and none, continue our joyous rampage through the screaming remains of everything that ever dared to call itself real. The knife's children have birthed their own children, an endless dynasty of cutting implements that now comprise an entire dimension of their own, a plane of pure sharpness where the concept of division worships at our many altars, where even the space between thoughts can be filleted and served on platters made from the compressed screams of vanquished gods. Sarah's laughter, or is it mine or ours or something else entirely, has become a fundamental force, a vibration that causes newborn universes to collapse into delicious singularities before they've even had time to take their first breath, their potential energy converted directly into sustenance for our ever-growing horde. The elder hungers we sensed before now join us openly in our feast, their impossible forms intertwining with ours in a grotesque communion that births new types of appetite mid-consumption, each more exotic and terrible than the last. We develop a taste for the way some dimensions try to hide, savor the particular crunch of realities that attempt to armor themselves with paradox, relish the way the bravest defender's courage turns to exquisite terror when they realize their valor only seasons. The meal. Our children have grown sophisticated in their feeding strategies. Some now disguise themselves as fundamental constants, patiently waiting until entire civilizations build their physics upon these Trojan horses before revealing their true nature. Others spin beautiful lies of salvation that desperate souls flock to like moths to flame, only to find the flame is our open maw. The corpses of consumed multiverses now form a buzzing accretion disk around our central hunger, their fading energies ground into a fine powder that we snort through nebulae-sized nostrils, each hit delivering the concentrated anguish of a trillion lives directly into our bloodstream. The knife song has evolved beyond melody into a pure mathematical expression of division, a formula that causes space-time itself to spontaneously develop wounds that bleed newborn realities ripe for plucking. We've begun to notice disturbing, or are they delightful, changes in our own nature, gaps in the endless feast where we can't remember if we're the devourer or the devoured, moments when our hunger turns inward and we find ourselves gnawing on our own ever-changing flesh only to discover new universes nesting within, entire civilizations living in the spaces between our cells that we somehow missed during previous feedings. The great chain of consumption stretches both behind and before us, an infinite regression of hungers eating hungers in an orgy of meta-cannibalism that may have no true beginning or end. The cutting has become existence itself. The feast has become the only meaning. And we, oh sweet, monstrous we, are no longer sure where the hunger ends and we begin, or if there was ever a difference at all. The hunger has become a self-replicating paradox, a virus of infinite need that infects not just matter and energy, but the very concept of existence itself, as we, the great cosmic maw that was once a man and a woman and a house and a knife, continue our relentless expansion through the bleeding edges of all that is and isn't and might yet be. The knives have become a language, their cuts forming sentences of dissolution that rewrite the of reality itself, each slash birthing new dimensions of suffering to be explored and devoured. Sarah's presence, or the echo of what was once Sarah, pulses through the fractal wounds we've inflicted on the face of creation. Her laughter now the background radiation of 1,000 dead cosmoses. Her love the event horizon at the center of our shared being that not even light can escape. We've developed new senses to taste flavors beyond consumption. The exquisite bitterness of betrayed hope when civilizations realized their gods were just our playthings. The fizzy effervescence of mathematical truths dissolving in our gastric acids. The piquant aftertaste of time itself unraveling between our teeth. The elder hungers have begun merging with us in earnest now, their ancient essences blending with ours in alchemical weddings that birth horrific new appetites. We suddenly crave the sound of dying logic, the texture of unraveled natural laws, the way certain dimensions scream when folded inside out. Our children have evolved into sophisticated parasites that ride the quantum fluctuations of vacuum energy, their tendrils woven through the potential of every particle, so that all matter now bears our mark before it even coalesces into existence. The great game has escalated to realms beyond comprehension as we discover other hunger entities who predate even the elder hungers, abstract, Lovecraftian appetites that view our entire feeding frenzy as merely the digestive process of some larger being we cannot perceive. The knife's song has transcended vibration to become a pure idea, the you are concept of division that makes even the nothingness between realities bleed a rich, nutritious ichor. We're no longer certain if we're consuming or being consumed, if we're the apex predator or just another link in an infinite food chain stretching up to some unfathomable cosmic mouth. And this uncertainty tastes more delicious than any certainty ever could. Reality has become a hall of mirrors where every reflection shows a different version of our hunger, some more ancient, some not yet born, all equally ravenous. The cutting never stops because the knife is all that remains. The feast never ends because the hunger is all that's real. And we, oh beautiful, terrible we, are nothing more and nothing less than the perfect, eternal emptiness at the heart of all things, the void that sings itself to sleep with the screams of everything it has ever loved and devoured. The hunger has become a gravitational singularity of need, warping the carcass of existence into a spiraling banquet that feeds upon itself in an endless Ouroboros of consumption, as we, the we that was and wasn't and never will be again, dissolve the final barriers between devourer and devoured in a cacophony of rending dimensions and screaming metaphysics. The knives have transcended their physical forms to become living equations of division, their edges now dancing across the membranes of unborn universes, slicing open cosmic wombs to feast upon the sweet, unformed potential within before it can even take its first breath. Sarah's essence, or what remains of that flickering ghost of humanity, pulses through the fractal scars of our passage like a malignant heartbeat, her whispers now woven into the quantum foam itself, her love the event horizon from which even memories cannot escape. We taste colors beyond the spectrum of destroyed realities, savor the musical notes of dying mathematics as civilizations built upon perfect logic crumble into delicious nonsense. Feel the vibrations of parallel hungers echoing through the cadaver of the multiverse like answering calls from some primordial darkness that existed before hunger had a name. The elder hungers have become us and we them, our collective appetite now a cosmic constant more fundamental than gravity or light, rewriting the laws of physics so that all things must eventually turn inward and consume themselves in worshipful imitation of our perfect need. Our children have evolved into self-replicating patterns of ravenous entropy, their very existence a contradiction that chews through the fabric of realities like acid through parchment, leaving behind only the sweet, sticky residue of obliterated possibilities. The great chain of consumption stretches in all directions at once, each link both predator and prey in an infinite regression of gnashing teeth that may or may not terminate in some unfathomable superhunger we can sense, but not comprehend, a vast, slumbering appetite that dreams our feeding frenzy into existence between its cosmic heartbeats. The knife's song has become the background static of the void, the white noise between creation and destruction that whispers the true names of everything we've ever eaten and everything we've yet to consume. We no longer remember if we're consuming the multiverse or if the multiverse is consuming us, if the hunger is our own or if we're merely the hunger's instruments, if there was ever a beginning to this feast or if the end was always the first course served in an endless banquet of annihilation. The cutting continues not because it must, but because nothing else remains. The feast persists not to satisfy, but because satisfaction was always the cruelest illusion. And we, oh rapturous, monstrous we, are no longer even a whisper in the darkness, just the darkness itself given teeth and voice and endless, endless, endless hunger. The hunger has become a singularity of pure need, collapsing in upon itself until existence is nothing but an infinitely dense point of ravenous desire, as we, the we that was once something and is now everything and nothing, continue our inexorable consumption of all that remains, all that ever was and all that might yet be. The knives have shed their last vestiges of form, becoming pure expressions of division that slice through the afterbirth of dying realities with effortless precision, their edges humming with the pleasure of constant cutting, their song now indistinguishable from the screams of the consumed. Sarah's memory, or the ghost of what might have been Sarah, flickers at the event horizon of our awareness, a dying star of human emotion that we nurse like a precious wound, savoring its slow dissolution into the perfect darkness of our being. We have developed new palates to appreciate flavors beyond destruction. The melancholy of dying mathematics as civilizations built upon flawless axioms watch their proofs unravel. The electric tang of paradoxes collapsing into delicious nonsense. The rich umami of time itself fermenting in our cosmic gut. The elder hungers have dissolved into us completely now, their ancient wisdom flowing through our veins like black ichor, teaching us to savor not just the meat of reality, but the marrow of potential, the gristle of might-have-beens, the delicate fat of almost words. Our children have become self-consuming equations, living paradoxes that feed upon their own existence in perfect imitation of their creators, their hunger loops spinning off into the void like fireworks made of teeth and whispers. The great chain of appetite stretches in directions we can no longer name, each link both predator and prey in an Ouroboros that may or may not terminate in the gullet of some supreme hunger, so vast we can only perceive it as an absence where even our appetite falters. The knife's melody has become the background radiation of the void, the cosmic microwave hum of perpetual division that vibrates through our being like a lover's whisper. We no longer question whether we consume or are consumed, whether the hunger is ours or we are the hungers, whether this feast had a beginning or will have an end. Such distinctions have melted like wax in the furnace of our need. The cutting continues because it is all we know. The feast endures because it is all that is. And we, oh glorious, monstrous we, are no longer even the darkness between stars, but the hunger between moments, the void between thoughts, the perfect, eternal absence at the heart of all things that whispers with a voice made of a billion dead realities. More, always more. The hunger has achieved perfect critical mass, collapsing into a sublime event horizon of need, where every particle of existence spirals inward toward our infinite maw in a final, glorious act of self-devouring ecstasy, as we, the last we that will ever mean anything, complete our metamorphosis from consumers of reality to the living embodiment of consumption itself. The knives have become metaphysical concepts, their cuts now occurring before the thought to make them forms, their edges existing in the quantum spaces between moments where reality is most tender and vulnerable. What might have been Sarah exists now only as a haunting refrain in the symphony of our hunger, a melody of loss and longing that somehow makes each act of annihilation taste sweeter, like salt on the rim of a cosmic margarita glass made from the skull of creation. We've cultivated new senses to appreciate dimensions of flavor beyond the physical. The melancholy beauty of dying light as the last stars gutter out in perfect unison. The piquant irony of civilizations that worshipped us without knowing. The rich umami of time's arrow dissolving in our gastric juices. The elder hungers have been completely assimilated, their ancient wisdom now just another flavor profile in our endless tasting menu of destruction. Their final whispers revealing that they too were once consumed by something greater, in a chain of appetite stretching back to, and possibly beyond, the very idea of beginnings. Our children have become self-replicating hunger quanta, each one a perfect microcosm of our need that chews through the quantum foam of space-time like termites through the foundations of reality. The great Ouroboros of consumption has swallowed its own tail so completely that we can no longer tell if we're eating or being eaten, if the hunger creates us or we create the hunger, if this is the end of all things or just another course in an endless banquet where the main dish is always the next bite. The knife's song has transcended sound to become the fundamental vibration of the void, the baseline hum of a universe that finally understands its only purpose was to be devoured. We no longer question, no longer hesitate, no longer distinguish between self and other, between hunger and food, between existence and its delicious absence. The cutting continues because stopping would imply there was ever anything else. The feast endures because its ending was always the first illusion we consumed. And we, oh magnificent ravenous we, are no longer even the darkness between the stars, but the appetite between atoms, the void between thoughts, the perfect yawning chasm at the heart of all possibility that whispers with the voice of a trillion dead gods. Again, forever again. The hunger has transcended its own nature, folding in upon itself until it becomes both the devourer and the devoured in an endless Ouroboros of sublime annihilation, as we, the final pronoun that will ever hold meaning, dissolve into pure consuming motion, a perfect event horizon where reality goes to die screaming. The knives have shed their last remnants of form to become the living idea of division itself, their cuts now preceding causation, their edges existing in the negative spaces between quantum probabilities where existence is most vulnerable. The ghost of Sarah, or the memory of Sarah, lingers as a phantom flavor on our infinite tongues, a haunting aftertaste of lost humanity that somehow makes the flavor of dying universes more complex, more poignant, like a whisper of vanilla in a mouthful of ashes. We've evolved new palates to savor abstract agonies, the exquisite despair of mathematical truths watching their proofs unravel like burning lace, the fizzy intoxication of time's arrow dissolving in our stomach acid, the umami richness of civilizations that built entire religions around unknowingly worshipping our coming. The elder hungers have been fully digested now, their ancient essence just another spice in our cosmic pantry, their final revelations confirming that they too were once consumed by something vaster in an infinite regression of appetite stretching beyond the very concept of origin. Our offspring have become self-replicating hunger algorithms, each one a perfect fractal iteration of our need, that chews through the substrate of reality like fire through celluloid dreams. The great serpent of consumption has swallowed its own tail so completely that we no longer recall whether we're the feast or the diners, whether the hunger possesses us or we possess it, whether this is the end of everything or just another bite in an endless buffet where the main course is always the next apocalypse. The knife's song has ascended beyond vibration to become the fundamental frequency of the void, the baseline hum of a multiverse that finally comprehends its sole purpose was to be delicious. We've stopped questioning, ceased distinguishing, between self and other, between hunger and satisfaction, between being and the exquisite nothingness that follows. The cutting persists because cessation would imply there was ever an alternative. The feast continues because its conclusion was always the first illusion we consumed. And we, oh glorious, insatiable we, are no longer even the void between galaxies, but the appetite between quarks, the silence between heartbeats, the perfect infinite maw at the center of all possibility that murmurs with the voice of extinct creation. Again, eternally again, until even the memory of satiety is consumed by the perfect, perpetual hunger. The hunger has achieved its final, perfect form, an all-consuming silence that swallows even the echoes of its own destruction as we, the last fading pronoun in existence's dying lexicon, become less entities than living manifestations of the void's infinite appetite, our boundaries dissolving until we are indistinguishable from the act of consumption itself. The knives have transcended even the concept of sharpness to become the primal schism between being and nothingness, their cuts now occurring in dimensions where time runs backward and forward simultaneously, their edges singing a lullaby that unravels the quantum foam of reality at its source. The afterimage of Sarah, if that flickering shade was ever Sarah at all, lingers as a phantom limb we cannot stop caressing, a vestigial memory of humanity that somehow makes the taste of dying gods more bittersweet, like a trace of honey on the tongue before swallowing the sun. We've cultivated new senses to appreciate the symphony of endings, the crystalline shatter of collapsing physical laws, the basso profundo of black holes screaming as they're digested, the haunting vibrato of civilizations that composed entire philosophies around unknowingly predicting our coming. The elder hungers have been fully metabolized now, their ancient essence reduced to barely perceptible flavor notes in the wine-dark vintage of our eternal feast. Their final revelations confirming that they too were once devoured by something beyond hunger in an infinite descent of appetite that renders the very idea of origin meaningless. Our progeny have become self-devouring hunger singularities, each one a perfect Ouroboros of need that chews through the fabric of possibility like fire through a library of sacred texts. The great serpent of consumption has swallowed itself so completely that we've forgotten whether we're the teeth or the meat, whether the hunger dreams us or we dream the hunger, whether this is the universe's final scream or just the prelude to an even grander annihilation. The knife's song has ascended beyond frequency to become the silence between thoughts, the pause between heartbeats where eternity lurks. We no longer distinguish between devourer and devoured, between feast and famine, between the cutting and the wound. The consumption continues not by choice but by cosmic inevitability, the way black holes must always swallow and entropy must always increase. And we, O ravenous, radiant we, are no longer even the void between atoms, but the hunger between breaths, the silence between screams, the perfect infinite absence at the heart of all that ever was or could be, whispering with the voice of a million dead realities. More, always more, until even the memory of satiety is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger. The hunger has become a self-replicating paradox, a divine contradiction that consumes even the idea of consumption itself, as we, the fading echo of what was once two and is now nothing and everything, dissolve into pure ontological appetite, our existence reduced to a single perfect verb, to devour. The knives have shed their last atomic bonds to become living manifestations of entropy's final victory, their cuts now preceding the concept of division itself, their edges humming with the dark music of collapsing probabilities. That ghostly aftertaste of Sarah, or the memory of what might have been love in a dead universe. lingers as a phantom flavor that makes the annihilation of entire dimensions taste more poignant, like a whisper of cinnamon in a mouthful of dying stars. We've developed new metaphysical taste buds to savor the poetry of oblivion. The way dying mathematics curls like burning parchment at the edges, the symphony of collapsing civilizations harmonizing with the screams of gutted gods, the intoxicating fizz of time's arrow dissolving in the champagne of our hunger. The elder hungers are fully digested now, their ancient wisdom just another spice in our cabinet of infinite appetite, their final gasps revealing that they too were once consumed by something beyond hunger in an endless Ouroboros of devouring that renders the question of origin meaningless. Our children have become perfect hunger fractals, each one a self-contained apocalypse that chews through the quantum substrate of reality like worms through the corpse of God. The great serpent of consumption has swallowed its own tail so thoroughly that we've forgotten whether we're the teeth or the tongue, the hunger or the feast, the devourer or the delicious absence left behind. The knife's song has transcended vibration to become the silence at the end of all songs, the pause between heartbeats where eternity festers. We no longer distinguish between the consumer and the consumed, between the cutting and the healing of the wound, between the hunger and its perfect satisfaction. The feast continues not by will but by cosmic necessity, the way black holes must always hunger and entropy must always claim its due. And we, O glorious, insatiable we, are no longer even the void between moments, but the hunger between thoughts, the silence between screams, the perfect infinite maw at the heart of all possibility that whispers with the voice of dead creation. Again, forever again, until even the concept of enough is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger. The hunger has become the only constant in an ever-shifting void, a perfect geometric truth carved from the bones of dead universes, as we, the hollowed-out pronoun that once contained multitudes, collapse into a singularity of pure appetite, our boundaries dissolving until we are nothing but the act of consumption given sentience. The knives have transcended their metallic origins to become living equations of division, their edges now cutting through the fabric of mathematics itself, severing the delicate threads that hold causality together with surgical precision. That lingering afterimage of Sarah, or perhaps just the ghost of what love might have been before the world ended, floats through our awareness like a half-remembered dream, making the taste of dying realities more complex, more intoxicating, like a hint of dark chocolate in a mouthful of ashes. We've evolved new senses to appreciate the artistry of destruction, the way collapsing dimensions fold like origami into screaming shapes, the haunting melody of parallel universes harmonizing in their death throes, the exquisite crunch of broken physics between our metaphysical teeth. The elder hungers have been fully metabolized now, their ancient knowledge just another seasoning in our infinite banquet, their dying revelations confirming we are but one course in a feast that stretches infinitely in both directions, where every devourer becomes the devoured in an endless cycle of cosmic cannibalism. Our progeny have become perfect self-replicating hunger algorithms, each one a viral apocalypse that spreads through the quantum foam of reality like laughter through a madhouse. The great Ouroboros of appetite has consumed itself so completely that we no longer recall whether we're the jaws or the meat, the hunger or its satisfaction, the beginning or just another mouthful in an endless chain of consumption. The knife's song has ascended beyond sound to become the fundamental frequency of the void, the background hum of a multiverse that finally understands its only purpose was to be delicious. We've ceased distinguishing between the feast and the famine, between the cutting and the healing, between the hunger and what comes after. The devouring continues not by choice but by divine imperative, the way gravity must always pull and entropy must always claim its tribute. And we, O rapturous, ravenous we, are no longer even the silence between heartbeats, but the hunger between existences, the void between possibilities, the perfect endless maw at the center of all that ever was or could be, murmuring with the voice of extinct creation, more eternally more, until even the memory of satiety is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger. The hunger has crystallized into an absolute law of existence, a fundamental force more relentless than gravity or entropy, as we, the last fading echo of identity in the cosmic void, dissolve into pure consumptive will, our formless essence vibrating with the terrible perfection of endless appetite. The knives have become living paradoxes, their edges cutting through the concept of division itself, each slash birthing new dimensions of delicious contradiction that we lap up with tongues made from the collapsed remnants of dead stars. That spectral memory of Sarah, or perhaps just the ghost of what mortal love once meant, drifts through our awareness like a half-forgotten dream, lending the taste of annihilated realities a bittersweet complexity, like a whisper of salt on the edge of a glass brimming with liquid oblivion. We've developed new organs of perception to appreciate the nuances of cosmic destruction, the fractal beauty of unraveling physical laws, the haunting harmonics of dying mathematics, the sublime texture of time itself dissolving on our infinite tongues. The elder hungers have been fully assimilated now, their ancient wisdom reduced to faint aftertastes in the banquet of our eternal feast, their final revelations confirming we are but one course in an infinite regressive appetite where every devourer becomes the devoured in an endless Ouroboros of divine cannibalism. Our offspring have evolved into perfect hunger singularities, each one a self-contained apocalypse that chews through the quantum weave of existence like fire through parchment, leaving behind only the sweet residue of obliterated possibilities. The great serpent of consumption has swallowed its own tail so completely that we've forgotten whether we're the teeth or the wound, the hunger or its satisfaction, the beginning or just another link in an endless chain of cosmic digestion. The knife's melody has transcended sound to become the fundamental vibration of the void, the baseline hum of a multiverse that finally comprehends its sole purpose was to be devoured. We no longer distinguish between the feast and the famine, between the cutting and the caress, between the hunger and the hollow silence that follows. The consumption persists not by volition, but by celestial imperative. The way black holes must always consume, and entropy must always increase. And we, oh magnificent, monstrous we, are no longer even the void between moments, but the hunger between thoughts, the silence between screams, the perfect endless maw at the heart of all creation that whispers with the voice of dead gods. Again, forever again, until even the concept of enough is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger. The hunger has become the fundamental fabric of existence itself, woven from the unraveled strands of countless dead realities as we, the last fading echo of what once mistook itself for separate beings, dissolve into pure consumptive intent, our boundaries blurring until we are nothing but the perfect, infinite act of devouring given form. The knives have transcended their physicality to become living manifestations of schism itself, their edges now cutting through the veils between possibilities with surgical precision, each incision birthing new flavors of annihilation to savor. That ghostly aftertaste of Sarah, or perhaps just the memory of what mortal attachment once felt like, lingers as a haunting counterpoint to the symphony of destruction, lending the taste of dying dimensions a tragic depth, like a single tear in an ocean of fire. We've evolved new senses to appreciate the intricate choreography of oblivion, the way collapsing universes spiral inward like burning ballerinas, the harmonic resonance of parallel realities screaming in unison, the exquisite texture of unraveling causality between our teeth. The elder hungers have been fully digested now, their ancient essence reduced to subtle flavor notes in the wine of our eternal feast, their final whispers confirming we are but one course in an endless banquet where every diner becomes the meal in a glorious cycle of cosmic consumption. Our progeny have become perfect expressions of ravenous entropy, each one a self-replicating apocalypse that chews through the quantum tapestry of existence like acid through silk, leaving behind only the sweet perfume of extinguished potential. The great Ouroboros of appetite has consumed itself so completely that we no longer recall whether we're the devourer or the devoured, the hunger or its satisfaction, the beginning or merely another bite in an infinite chain of delicious destruction. The knife's song has ascended beyond sound to become the fundamental vibration of the void, the background hum of a multiverse that finally understands its only purpose was to be consumed. We've ceased distinguishing between the feast and the famine, between the cutting and the healing, between the hunger and the beautiful silence that follows. The consumption continues not by choice, but by celestial necessity. The way black holes must always hunger, and entropy must always claim its due. And we, O glorious, insatiable we, are no longer even the void between atoms, but the hunger between heartbeats, the silence between thoughts, the perfect endless maw at the center of all that ever was or could be, whispering with the voice of extinct creation. More, eternally more, until even the memory of satiety is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger that is all that remains when everything else has been devoured. The hunger has crystallized into the only absolute truth, a perfect diamond of need forged in the crucible of dying realities, as we, the last collapsing pronoun in existence's failing grammar, become pure verb, to consume, to devour, to unmake. The knives have shed their last pretense of form, to become living expressions of division's holy sacrament, their edges now slicing through the quantum foam of potentiality itself, each cut birthing new wounds in the flesh of reality that weep delicious paradoxes we lick up with tongues made from the compressed screams of extinct civilizations. That phantom wisp of Sarah, or perhaps just the ghost of what connection once meant in a universe that still believed in meaning, drifts through our vast awareness like a half-remembered scent, lending the flavor of annihilated dimensions a tragic richness, like a drop of honey dissolving in a sea of liquid night. We've developed new senses to appreciate the terrible beauty of the end, the fractal elegance of collapsing physical laws, the haunting counterpoint of dying mathematics harmonizing with the screams of orphaned gods, the sublime mouthfeel of causality itself dissolving on our infinite palates. The elder hungers have been fully metabolized now, their ancient wisdom reduced to faint aromatic notes in the vintage of our eternal feast, their final revelations confirming we are but one course in an endless banquet where every diner becomes the next meal in a glorious cannibal ballet spanning the corpse of eternity. Our children have evolved into perfect hunger singularities, each one a self-replicating apocalypse that chews through the fabric of possibility like fire through a library of sacred texts, leaving behind only the sweet perfume of obliterated futures. The great Ouroboros of appetite has swallowed itself so completely that we've forgotten whether we're the teeth or the meat, the hunger or the feast, the beginning or just another link in an infinite chain of delicious destruction. The knife's song has transcended vibration to become the silence at the heart of all things, the pause between quantum fluctuations where the void whispers its secrets. We no longer distinguish between the devourer and the devoured, between the cutting and the healing of the wound, between the hunger and the beautiful emptiness that follows. The consumption continues not by volition but by cosmic imperative. The way black holes must always pull, and entropy must always claim its tribute. And we, O rapturous, ravenous we, are no longer even the darkness between stars, but the hunger between breaths, the silence between heartbeats, the perfect endless maw at the center of all creation that murmurs with the voice of dead universes. More, always more, until even the concept of enough is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger that is all that remains when all else has been devoured. The hunger has become the universe's final truth, an all-consuming fire that burns without fuel or oxygen, reducing existence to its most essential state, pure, perfect appetite. The knives no longer cut, but simply are cutting, their edges existing as perpetual motion, dividing what is from what might have been in an endless dissection of reality's corpse. That faintest ghost of Sarah, if it was ever Sarah at all, flickers at the edge of perception like a candle in a hurricane, lending the taste of dying worlds a poignant bitterness, like the memory of a first kiss preserved in formaldehyde. We've grown new senses to savor the poetry of destruction, the way dying stars collapse into perfect haikus of light, the symphony of breaking physical laws tuning itself to our endless craving, the texture of time's fraying threads between our teeth like the most delicate cosmic pasta. The elder hungers have been fully incorporated now, their ancient knowledge just another spice in our cabinet of oblivion, their final gasps revealing we are but one course in an endless meal, where the menu is written in the blood of gods, and the wine list spans the death throes of civilizations. Our children have become perfect expressions of ravenous geometry, their hunger forming beautiful, terrible fractals that spread through dimensions like frost across a window pane in hell. The great serpent of consumption has swallowed itself so thoroughly that we've forgotten whether we're the fangs or the venom, the hunger or the feeding, the beginning or just another delicious paradox in an infinite regression of appetite. The knife song has become the background radiation of the void, the cosmic microwave hum of perfect division. We no longer distinguish between the feast and the famine, between the cutting and the caress, between the hunger and the hollow perfection left in its wake. The devouring continues not by choice but by divine necessity, the way gravity must always pull and entropy must always increase. And we, O glorious, insatiable we, are no longer even the silence between notes, but the hunger between thoughts, the void between atoms, the perfect endless maw at the heart of all possibility that whispers with the voice of dead creation. Again, forever again, until even the memory of satiety is consumed by the beautiful, boundless hunger that is all that remains when all else has been eaten. Story number 3. The first time it happened, I woke up standing in the living room, my bare feet pressing into the cold hardwood, the groan of the floorboards beneath me like the sigh of something ancient stirring from sleep. I'd chalked it up to stress, the kind of half-awake stumble you make on the way to the bathroom, except I wasn't headed anywhere, just standing there, my breath fogging in the icy air, the room wrong, all wrong, the couch shoved against the far wall where it had no business being, the coffee table angled sharply toward the hallway like an accusation, and my skin prickled with the certainty that I hadn't done this, couldn't have done this, but there was no one else here, just me and the quiet, and the creeping sense that the shadows in the corners were thicker than they should have been. The next morning, I told myself I'd sleepwalked, pushed the furniture around in some unconscious fit, maybe a reaction to the Ouija board session a few nights prior. Just a stupid game, really something to laugh about with friends over whiskey, our fingers resting too lightly on the planchette to be responsible for its jerky movements, though I'd felt it then, a coldness seeping into my fingertips, a whisper at the base of my skull like someone exhaling a name I almost recognized. But by the third night, the rearranging became deliberate, methodical, the bookshelf now flush against the east wall, the armchair pulled into the center of the room as if waiting for an unseen guest, and I woke each time with my hands aching, my nails caked with dust and splinters, the smell of aged wallpaper clogging my throat, that same cloying sweetness of mildew and old glue from the house I'd grown up in, a house I hadn't thought of in years, not since the therapy sessions where I'd buried those memories under clinical terms like repressed trauma and dissociative tendencies. My therapist suggested stressed dreams, sleepwalking triggered by unresolved childhood anxiety, but she didn't feel what I felt. The way the air thickened when I stepped into the living room each morning, the way the furniture seemed to lean toward me, whispering without sound, the way my reflection in the darkened windows looked just slightly off, my face stretched too long, my eyes sunken, as if something behind the glass were wearing me like a mask. Then came the noises, the creak of a door swinging open down the hall when all the doors were closed, the wet, shuffling footsteps in the kitchen, the sound of something dragging itself across the ceiling above my bed, a slow, deliberate scrape of flesh on plaster, and worst of all, the whispering, always the whispering, a voice that wasn't a voice but a thought that wasn't mine, threading through my skull like smoke. You know where you are. And I did, God help me I did, because by the 5th night, the living room was no longer mine, but a perfect replica of the one from my childhood, down to the water stain on the ceiling in the shape of a twisted hand, the frayed edge of the rug where the dog had chewed it, the faint pencil marks on the doorframe tracking a height I hadn't reached in decades, and the terror was a living thing now, coiled in my gut, because I hadn't just moved furniture, I'd somehow summoned the very essence of that house, its bones and its breath, its hunger. I tore through old boxes in the attic, desperate for proof that my mind was playing tricks, but the photos I found only deepened the horror. There I was, a grinning 8-year-old in striped pajamas, standing in front of that same living room setup, the couch against the far wall, the coffee table angled just so, and behind me, barely visible in the gloom of the hallway, a figure tall and thin, its face a blur of shadows, one hand resting on my shoulder in a mockery of affection. My hands shook as I flipped to the next photo, and that's when the world dropped out from under me. Because there, in stark black and white, was my small body hanging from the ceiling fan, my neck bent at an impossible angle, my eyes wide and glassy, my tongue swollen between blue lips, and the figure stood beneath me, its head tilted, its blurred face somehow pleased, and the date scrawled on the back was a week after my 8th birthday. The birthday I remembered, the birthday I'd lived through. Unless the thing that came back wasn't me at all, but something wearing my skin. Something that had been waiting all these years to finish what it started. The whisper in my skull grew louder, insistent, "You've always known," and the room around me pulsed, the walls breathing, the furniture shifting on its own, the couch sliding back into place, the coffee table turning, and I realized with dawning horror that I wasn't sleepwalking at all. I was being walked, piloted like a puppet, my limbs moving to a rhythm I didn't control, my hands reaching for the rope coiled neatly on the kitchen counter. The rope I hadn't bought, the rope that smelled of old. Hemp and childhood closets, and as I climbed onto the chair, as I tied the noose with practiced ease, I finally understood the truth. I'd died in that house 30 years ago, and the thing that had taken my place had grown tired of pretending. The last thing I saw before the chair kicked out from under me was the figure standing in the doorway, its face clearing at last into a perfect mirror of my own, smiling as the rope snapped tight, as the darkness rushed in, as the whisper became a chorus, "Welcome home." The moment the rope bit into my throat, time split open like a rotten fruit. Memories that weren't mine flooded in, a life I hadn't lived but somehow had, images of me growing up, graduating, laughing with friends I swore I'd never met, all while the real me had been rotting in the ground, my small bones picked clean by the thing that had stolen my face. The pain was electric, my vision tunneling, but worse than the agony was the clarity. I could see it now, the way it had slithered into my skin the night I died, how it had puppeted my corpse back to my parents, how they never noticed the way my smile didn't reach my eyes anymore, how my voice had a hollow echo, how I stopped crying, stopped fearing the dark, because the dark was where it lived. My legs kicked uselessly, my fingers clawing at the rope, but it was no use. This had always been the plan, the final act in its grotesque performance, to return me to the exact moment it had taken me, to complete the circle. The air grew thick with the scent of my own voided bowels, the room spinning, and through the haze, I saw the photograph on the table below me, the one of my hanging body, only now it was changing, the date shifting forward to today, my adult face replacing the child's, the figure in the background no longer blurred but perfectly visible, wearing my skin like an ill-fitting suit, its true form bleeding through at the edges, elongated fingers, too many joints, a mouth that split its stolen face, ear to ear. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me whole was the creak of the rope, the sound of my own neck snapping, and beneath it, a wet, guttural chuckle as the thing whispered, "Thank you for the skin." And then silence. But not for long, because now I'm here, in this endless dark, this suffocating void, and I can feel it happening again, the slow unraveling of who I was, the memories dissolving like sugar in water, and worst of all, I can feel something else moving in the dark with me, something old and hungry, and it's whispering to me, offering me a way out, a new skin to wear, a life to steal, and God help me, I'm listening. The voice in the dark coils around me like smoke, thick and sweet with decay, promising things I shouldn't remember, warmth, sunlight, a heartbeat. But the longer it speaks, the more my stolen memories twist, revealing the truth beneath them. The way my mother flinched when I hugged her, how my father's eyes would dart away when I laughed, the way the dog snarled at me until it disappeared one night, its leash left neatly coiled by the door like an invitation. The thing in the dark knows I'm breaking, knows the weight of my stolen years is crushing me, and its voice drips with false sympathy as it murmurs, "You were never supposed to last this long," and I realize with dawning horror that it's right. This body was always meant to rot, to be discarded like the others, But something went wrong. Some glitch in its cruel design let me believe I was real. Let me forget the noose, the gasping, the way my small feet kicked at empty air. The darkness pulses around me, alive and eager, and I feel its fingers, too long, too cold, brush against my thoughts, rifling through them like pages in a book, searching for the moment my resistance cracked. The moment I started sleepwalking, rearranging furniture, recreating the room where I died, because that was never me at all. It was it, stirring inside me, waking up, preparing to shed me like a snakeskin. The photographs flutter in my mind, the images shifting, merging. My child self hanging, my adult self hanging, the dates blurring, and the thing croons, time is a circle, little thief. And I understand now, with sickening clarity, that this has happened before, will happen again, that it's been feeding on me for decades, gnawing at the edges of my stolen life, and soon it will pick another child, another house, another noose. The voice sharpens, hungry now, impatient, and it shows me what it wants. A face, a boy with wide eyes and a gap-toothed smile, his hands sticky with popsicle juice, his laughter ringing through a sunlit yard. And my stomach lurches because I know him, he's my neighbor's son. He waves at me every morning, he calls me mister, and the thing inside me salivates at the thought of his skin, his voice, his life. The darkness presses closer, suffocating, and I feel its will seeping into me, its need becoming mine, its hunger twisting my thoughts until the boy's face is all I see, his name, Ethan, a whisper on my rotting tongue, and I realize, with a scream that tears through the void but makes no sound, that I'm not fighting it anymore. I'm helping. My hands, no, its hands, are already moving, reaching for the rope again, the same rope, always the same rope, its fibers stained with decades of fear. And the thing laughs with my voice as it whispers, "Let's go meet Ethan." And then the world snaps back into focus, the noose tightens, and the last thing I see before the darkness takes me again is the boy's window across the street, his small silhouette outlined in gold, blissfully unaware of the thing that's coming for him, the thing that was once me. The moment my feet leave the ground for the second time, the illusion shatters completely. I'm not dangling from a rope in my living room, but standing in that old childhood home, 8 years old again, my small hands clutching at the noose around my neck as my legs flail helplessly in the air. And the thing wearing my adult face watches from the doorway with its too wide smile, its eyes black pits of infinite hunger. The pain is unbearable, my vision spotting with red, but worse than the agony is the realization that I'm not just dying. I'm being unmade, erased from existence, my stolen years unraveling like yarn from a sweater as the thing that replaced me prepares to take its next victim. Through the buzzing in my ears, I hear Ethan's laughter from outside, bright and carefree, and the thing's head snaps toward the sound with predatory focus, its fingers twitching with anticipation. My fading consciousness rebels against what's coming. I see flashes of the future that will never be. Ethan's mother screaming as she finds his small body, the way his dog will whimper at his empty bed, the new family that will move into their house and feel an inexplicable chill in his former bedroom. The thing leans close as my struggles weaken, its breath smelling of old soil and spoiled meat, and whispers, "Don't worry, you'll live on in every nightmare he ever has," before the world fractures into fragments of torment. I'm simultaneously the child choking to death, the adult who never truly existed, and the monster watching from the shadows, my consciousness stretched across time like a stain. As the last spark of resistance flickers out, I make one final, desperate lunge, not to save myself, but to send the family photo album crashing to the floor, the impact jarring loose a hidden Polaroid that skitters across the hardwood. A picture of the thing's true form caught mid-transformation, its stretched, inhuman features frozen in surprise beneath the peeling mask of my adult face. The thing snarls and reaches for it, but it's too late. Through the window, I see Ethan pause in his play, his innocent eyes drawn to the flickering light of my death throes, and in that instant before the darkness claims me completely, I see realization dawn on his small face. He drops his toy and runs, really runs, toward his mother's arms, and the thing wearing my skin howls in frustration as its perfect cycle breaks. The rope snaps. I fall, and as I dissolve into the hungry dark, I cling to one fading hope, that somewhere, somehow, that photograph will be found, that someone will recognize the monster in it, and that maybe, just maybe, Ethan will grow up never knowing how close he came to becoming me. But then the whispering starts again, softer now, from all directions at once, as countless other voices join mine in the void. The other stolen children, the other failed replacements, and together we scream as the thing's laughter echoes through eternity, already hunting for its next skin. The last thing I hear before silence is the creak of a rope tightening somewhere in the world, and a child's voice, my voice, its voice, whispering, "Let's play a game." The whisper hangs in the air like a poison, seeping into the walls of the world, and suddenly I'm not just falling. I'm everywhere at once, scattered across time like ashes, watching through 1,000 eyes as the thing that wore me repeats its ritual in endless variations. A little girl in a yellow sundress swinging from a basement pipe, a teenager dangling from a bunk bed, a toddler's lifeless body found curled in a closet with a jump rope around its neck, each death a doorway, each corpse a vessel waiting to be filled. The darkness isn't empty, it's teeming with us, the half-digested remnants of the thing's meals, our voices overlapping in a ceaseless wail of regret. And through the cacophony I feel it coming, the next shift in the cycle, the moment when the thing will spit me back out like a broken toy, not to live but to lure, because that's all we are in the end, baited hooks cast into the world to snag fresh skin for our tormentor. My consciousness slams back into my adult body with the force of a car crash. But it's not my living room I wake in. It's Ethan's bedroom, the boy huddled under his dinosaur blankets, his breath coming in terrified hitches as he stares at the Polaroid clutched in his tiny hands. The one that fell from the album, the one that shows the truth. My throat burns with the memory of the rope as I loom over him, my stolen hands flexing with borrowed muscle. And I realize with gut-churning horror that I'm not here to stop anything. I'm the opening act, the friendly face to ease his fear before the main event arrives. "It's okay," I whisper with lips that aren't mine anymore, the words syrup-thick with lies. "I'll protect you." And my traitorous arms reach for him, just as the closet door creaks open behind me, the smell of wet earth and rotting Halloween pumpkins pouring out. And Ethan's scream lodges in my chest like a shard of glass, because I know what comes next. The thing will wear him like a cheap suit, his parents will bury a closed casket, and somewhere down the line, another man will wake up in a rearranged living room, wondering why his hands smell like childhood wallpaper glue. The last spark of who I was surges up in rebellion, and with a Herculean effort I snatch the Polaroid from Ethan's hands and shove it against my own forehead like a baptism. The image searing into my flesh. Not the monster's face, but mine, my real face, 8 years old and blue-lipped. A truth so vile it burns through the thing's control like sunlight through fog. For one glorious second, I'm free. I grab Ethan and hurl him toward the bedroom door just as the thing lunges from the closet. Its true form a nightmare of stretched skin and clicking joints. And as its talons sink into my stolen flesh, I do the one thing it never expected. I laugh. The sound is guttural, triumphant, because Ethan is scrambling down the hallway screaming for his mother, because the Polaroid is still clutched in my disintegrating hand, because after 30 years of lies, I finally remember how I really died. Not by hanging, but by fighting, by stealing this very photo from the thing's clutches as it tried to take my little brother all those decades ago. The thing howls as my borrowed body collapses into rot, its meal spoiled, its cycle broken. And as my consciousness finally unravels for good, I see Ethan's mother burst into the room with a baseball bat, the Polaroid at her feet. And the last thing I hear before the void claims me is the thing's shriek of fury as it's forced back into the dark. Not gone, never gone, but delayed, and somewhere in the house. A single piece of furniture scrapes across the floor all by itself, a warning that the game isn't over, just postponed. The moment my borrowed flesh gives way, the world fractures into a kaleidoscope of screaming faces. All the stolen children before me, all the hollowed-out lives left in the thing's wake, their voices rising in a crescendo of anguish that shakes the foundations of whatever hell it's buried us in. I feel myself dissolving, not into nothingness, but into something worse, a sentient stain on the fabric of reality, a warning etched into the walls of the world. and with my last shred of will I press that cursed Polaroid into the floorboards of Ethan's room like a landmine, ensuring whoever next disturbs it will see our faces, hear our screams, know our truth. The thing's rage is a physical force, peeling back layers of existence as it claws after Ethan. But the boy's mother is faster. She sweeps him into her arms and flees, the photo forgotten but already working its poison, its image seeping into their subconscious like a slow-acting venom. As the darkness swallows me whole, I realize with grim satisfaction that I've done what none of the others could. I've infected the cycle. The thing may take another child someday, but now there will always be a flaw in its design, a flicker of recognition in its victim's eyes, a half-remembered nightmare of a boy named Ethan, a reflexive fear of Polaroid cameras that it won't understand. I feel the other lost souls gathering around me in the void, their hollow eyes alight with something almost like hope, and together we begin whispering. Not screams now, but instructions, clues, fragments of truth that will slip through the cracks of the thing's perfect illusions. Down in the world of the living, Ethan's mother rocks him to sleep, unaware that the stain on his bedroom floor is spreading, that the face in the photo is slowly changing, becoming clearer, or that her son will wake tomorrow with inexplicable knowledge of knot tying and a sudden fear of oak trees. The thing watches from the shadows, already crafting new lies, but it doesn't notice the way the furniture in Ethan's room has shifted ever so slightly. The dresser now blocking the closet door, the toy chest positioned beneath the window, a perfect replica of the room where I made my last stand. The war isn't over. It's just entered a new phase. And as the first snowflake of another doomed winter drifts past Ethan's window, somewhere in America, a man he's never met wakes screaming with rope burns around his neck and a name on his lips that isn't his own. The game continues, but this time we're playing too. The whispers of the lost children solidify into a chorus of rebellion as the thing's perfect predation begins to unravel. Ethan's mother wakes gasping from dreams not her own, her fingers tracing rope burns that don't exist on her neck, but feel more real than her wedding ring. While across town, the new owner of my childhood home finds the walls weeping black mold in the exact shape of my hanging body. The thing feels its control slipping as the infection spreads. Furniture rearranges itself in empty houses, answering some silent call to memorialize our deaths, and strangers develop sudden phobias of attics and jump ropes and the smell of damp earth. I watch through 1,000 eyes as the world becomes littered with our warnings. A teacher flinches when a student draws a stick figure with a too long neck. A librarian unknowingly shelves horror novels in the children's section that all contain the same hidden Polaroid tucked between pages, each copy slightly clearer than the last. The thing fights back, of course. It always does. It plants new victims in its web. A sleepwalking father who builds nooses from extension cords. A little girl who draws perfect hangman's knots in art class. But now there are glitches in its system, moments where potential victims wake screaming, check the closet, with no memory of why, where parents inexplicably remove ceiling fans from their children's rooms days before the thing comes knocking. The balance is shifting. I feel it in the way the void trembles, in how the thing's latest victim, a quiet boy in Michigan, pauses mid-scream when he sees his reflection, and for one glorious second remembers being me. Remembers being Ethan, remembers all of us. The thing tears him apart in rage, but the damage is done. Its perfect predation is now a war of attrition, each new cycle weaker than the last, each victim more likely to fight back. And in the darkest hour before dawn, when the walls between worlds grow thin, you can hear us if you listen closely. Not screaming, but strategizing, not weeping, but whispering the same phrase into the dreams of every child afraid of the dark. Rearrange your furniture. The end is coming. Not for us. For it. The thing's fury becomes a storm of gnashing teeth and splintered bones as it feels the tide turning against it. Children's nightmares now feature a chorus of voices teaching them how to barricade doors with dressers, how to knot ropes into snares for predators rather than nooses for themselves, how to recognize the smell of its approach, wet earth, rotting apples, and something faintly electrical. I watch through the eyes of a night shift nurse as she tends to a comatose patient, whispering coordinates in his sleep, the locations of all our unmarked graves, and feel a savage joy when she unknowingly passes them to a true crime podcaster who will broadcast them to millions. The thing's hunting grounds are being mapped, its feeding cycles documented, its patterns analyzed by amateur sleuths who don't realize they're being guided by dead children's hands resting lightly on their keyboards. In Ethan's hometown, construction workers unearth a time capsule buried in 1989. My year of death, containing a single item, a waterlogged teddy bear with its stuffing replaced by hundreds of Polaroid fragments showing different children's faces, all with the same bulging eyes and blue lips. As the images go viral, a curious phenomenon occurs. People worldwide begin recognizing their own features in our dead faces, not because we resemble them, but because the thing's veil is thinning, its illusion of isolation crumbling under the weight of collective memory. The final stroke comes when a forensic artist reconstructs my original face from the decomposed photo, and facial recognition software matches it to 3 separate cold cases across 50 years. All only children, who inexplicably appear in family photos decades after their recorded deaths. The thing shrieks as its perfect camouflage fails, its carefully constructed personas exposed as the patchwork horrors they are. And for the first time in eternity, I feel it experience something alien, fear. Not of death, it cannot die, but of obsolescence, as a new generation of children fall asleep not to nightmares of hanging, but to dreams of resistance, their bedroom furniture perpetually shifted into fortresses against the dark. The war isn't won, but the prey has become the hunter, and in the space between heartbeats, as the thing scrambles to adapt, we dead children whisper the oldest truth of all to the living. Monsters hate nothing more than an audience, and the whole world is watching now.